121. Little Black Dragon's Enlightenment book was destroyed. Sir, my leg's fine. The light's perfect at noon. Can we take a few more photos? Barnabas Cuff will be picky about which ones he uses, Thalandra said, scrambling to his feet and putting all his weight on his left leg. He rattled off a few quick shots with his camera to prove he really was okay. Gilderoy Lockhart reluctantly holstered his wand. When he caught sight of the lightning-shaped scar on the boy's forehead, he practically leapt. "You're Harry Potter?" "Hello, I'm Harry Potter," Harry answered. Gilderoy beamed and reached for Harry's arm, but Harry stepped smartly aside. Gilderoy tried again, and as he went to shake the other's hand, he noticed the book in Robin Lestrange's arms and his expression soured. Shedding the superficial, how to be an honest person. Robin Lestrange? Gilderoy asked, smiling as always. Lestrange, yes, I know you. You're the one who drove off the Dark Lord and protected the Philosopher's Stone. Gilderoy extended his right hand courteously. Robin raised his right to shake, and at the last second, Lockhart withdrew his right hand and offered his left. Before anyone could make sense of the odd switch, flames spurted from a ruby ring on Lockhart's finger and set the book in Robin's hands alight. The cover went up in a blur of fire. Lockhart clutched his left hand and put on an air of naive shock. "Oh, Xiao Hong's being mischievous again. I'm so sorry. Xiao Hong spits fire whenever it sees a book it doesn't like," Robin scowled. "That's pathetic. You, a famous author, can't even tolerate a little dragon primer?" He raised his voice. 10 galleons. What? Lockhart blinked, genuinely bewildered for show. "That book is worth 10 galleons, Mr. Lockhart. If you don't have the money, you can pawn Xiao Hong to me until you do. When you've come up with it, I'll return him." 10 galleons? Lockhart repeated, then, smooth as ever, produced the coins without hesitation. "I was looking for a copy full of annotations," he added, as if giving Robin an option. "If you'd be willing to give me one of your personally annotated copies of Shedding the Superficial, then I shall consider Xiao Hong's little protest forgiven." Robin had asked for either 10 galleons or an annotated copy. Lockhart chose the easier route and handed over the coins with a theatrical chuckle. "How admirable," he said, addressing Harry. "Even a small hero wants to learn. When shopping for old books, he insists on ones with marginalia. If I'd devoted myself to alchemy instead of traveling the world and turning my adventures into books," Lockhart continued, "I dare say I would have refined a much more potent philosopher's stone by now. But I love my life. I write each book with meticulous care. That's why I'm the best-selling author in the wizarding world. Come, up on stage with me. After the photos, I'll give you two surprises." He hooked an arm through Robin's and Harry's and tried to pull them forward. Robin planted his feet like an anchor and refused to budge. "Robin, you have every right to demand compensation for a burned book," Lockhart said, smiling without smiling. Between his teeth, he added, quietly but insistently, "Bring the others up, too." "The others," Robin said. "Ron Weasley, Hermione Granger, they helped protect the Philosopher's Stone as well." Robin glanced back at the two standing behind him. Lockhart hesitated a beat, then cheerfully dragged Ron and Hermione through the crowd. "Little heroes, care to come up on stage with me?" "Of course," Hermione cried. "I don't see why not," Ron said, reluctant but pleased. Lockhart shepherded the four of them up onto the makeshift stage in front of the Flourish and Blots crowd. He stood between Harry and Robin, hands on their shoulders, and fussed to Thalandra to take some pictures. Thalandra perched on a stool a shop assistant fetched and fired the shutter in a flurry. A puff of purple smoke, part of Lockhart's nominally theatrical flourish, made those in the front row blink and tear up. "Such beautiful smiles," Lockhart trilled, flashing his pearly teeth in a grin that never reached his eyes. When Thalandra scooted his stool back to the edge of the stage, Harry murmured, "Can we get down now?" "Not yet." Lockhart's grip on Harry's arm tightened. Then he raised his voice for the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, I'd like to ask your attention." When the chatter died down and every gaze fixed on him, he went on, "What a splendid gathering we have in one shop today. It would be a shame not to share some good news. These 4 young heroes came to Flourish and Blot simply to purchase my complete works. I'm going to give them each a set, Gilderoy Lockhart's complete works, right now." The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Lockhart savored the moment, then gestured for silence. But that's not all. They'll soon receive something even more valuable than my complete works. A real, magical Gilderoy Lockhart. In fact, I've already worked out an arrangement with Albus Dumbledore. Next month, I'll be going to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. The announcement was met with thunderous applause. The four of them, now burdened with heavy stacks of books, slipped off the stage swaying under the weight. "Ron, give me the books. I'll get them signed. You lot wait for me outside," Mrs. Weasley called, opening her hands. "No, I don't want someone else's famous name on my textbook," Ron protested weakly. "Ron, hurry, give them to me," Mrs. Weasley insisted, practically swooning at the sight of her idol preparing to sign. Thud, a heavy pile of second-year textbooks landed in her arms. "Robin?" she said, surprised. "I went ahead and bought everything on the second-year list," Robin said. "This set is for Ginny." "That's wonderful," Mrs. Weasley beamed. "It's terribly crowded in here. Wait for me outside. Ron, keep an eye on Ginny for me." They pushed through the press and found a space by the wall. Ginny stood obediently, clutching a chipped cauldron to her chest. Inside the cauldron was an old quill and 3 battered books. The most decrepit was A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, its cover cracked, pages yellowed, the spine streaked with mold. "Ginny, have you bought everything on the first-year supplies list?" Robin asked. Ginny shook her head. "Not yet. Things are so scattered and hard to find. Mum said she'll take me to hunt for the rest after she gets Mr. Lockhart's autograph." "Don't bother hunting," Robin said, producing a small yellow cloth bag the size of Ginny's palm. "A back-to-school gift." Ginny stared. "What's this?" "A magical cloth bag, about 10 cubic meters in capacity. I bought a set of first-year essentials and put them inside. If the robes are too big, ask Mrs. Smith Weasley to alter them." 122. The Horcrux diary isn't here? "Robin, the Ministry of Magic forbids using the undetectable extension charm for private purposes. It can only be used on ministry-licensed items, like family tents or school trunks. If you do this, you'll be accused," Ron murmured. Robin rolled his eyes. He thought of Arthur Weasley, who'd been famous for tinkering with Muggle things, but Harry cut in. "It's not the undetectable extension charm. I'm not sure what charm it is, though." "This is too valuable. I can't accept it," Ginny said, holding the small yellow cloth bag out to him. Robin pushed it back into her hands with a smile and a wink at Harry and the others. Hermione, cheeks puffed, stepped forward to help. "Ginny, a magical bag isn't nothing. Robin picked this for a reason. It's exactly what you need. Perfect choice. If you don't want it, I do. I've been thinking of getting a new quill," Ron added, grinning to tease his sister. When he reached as if to grab it, Ginny quickly stuffed the bag into her pocket, blushing. "Thank you," she murmured. A sharp, disdainful sound cut through the calm. "Tsk." Draco Malfoy descended the stairs with his usual sneer. "Ha! The famous little heroes. Come into a bookshop and make themselves into the evening news," he mocked. Ginny stepped forward, face flushed, ready to retort. "Don't be ridiculous. They didn't want that either." Malfoy smirked and waved a hand. "Oh ho, the freckled little firecracker. Potter, Lestrange, whose little girlfriend is she?" His tone dragged, deliberately cruel. Ginny went red and tucked her head, the anger vanishing. Ron, smelling an insult, lashed out. "Oh, it's you, the spray warrior. I wondered why the shop smelled like." He made a disgusted face. "Malfoy, you haven't done it again, have you?" Malfoy's face darkened. "You lot are paupers. Your parents can't afford school supplies. They must be starving next month." Ron's face went hard. He flung his book toward the cauldron at Ginny's feet, clenched his fist, and stepped forward as if to strike. Arthur Weasley, who had been leading Fred and George out of the shop, grabbed Ron's wrist. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Da!" A cold voice interrupted. Well, Arthur Weasley. Long time no see." A tall wizard with pale, sleek hair and a pointed face had appeared at the shop's entrance. His eyes were not indifferent like Snape's. They were calculating and cruel. Lucius Malfoy. Arthur's usually genial face cooled. "I hear the misuse of Muggle Artifacts office has been busy, raiding houses all over. The ministry must be paying you overtime, eh?" Lucius shoved his hand into Ginny's cauldron and, with exaggerated disgust, pulled out the shabbiest book he could find, A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, its cover tattered. Such a wretched book. Probably wouldn't even level a table leg. "Arthur, Working all year and giving your child junk like this. What a disgrace, he sneered. Arthur reddened. Our definitions of disgrace clearly differ, Lucius. Lucius's gaze flicked to Hermione and the Granger family standing nearby. Befriending muggles too? Arthur, is there no bottom to your family's decline? With a clang, Arthur hurled Ginny's chipped cauldron at Lucius. It struck the wizard, who was momentarily stunned. Arthur lunged, slamming Lucius into a bookshelf. Dozens of books toppled and rained down. Lucius gripped the snake-headed cane he always carried and swung for Arthur's head. Arthur ducked and retaliated with a punch. Magic was abandoned for a moment of bare-handed violence. Lucius's cane gave him an edge, but Arthur's stubborn strength kept things chaotic. Robin, thinking fast, activated a skill he had, Nagini's poison mist condenser, and launched several near-invisible spider-silk-thin needles at Lucius. The strike staggered Lucius long enough for Arthur to press his advantage. "Stop, Arthur! Lucius, stop!" Mrs. Weasley shrieked as she rushed in. Fred and George cheered excitedly, egging their father on. "Hit him! Kick him! Come on, Dad!" Percy tried to intervene. "Dad, stop! You'll lose your job. This will affect." Bookshelves toppled as the crowd surged and dodged the combatants. The shop assistant tried to hold up a collapsing shelf. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, have mercy. The shop can't take this." A booming voice sliced through the chaos. "Clear out. Everyone, clear out." Hagrid stepped over scattered volumes and planted himself between Arthur and Lucius. With a single move that seemed to tear them apart, he yanked both men away from each other. Arthur's lip was split, red marks streaked his neck. Lucius's eye was bruised, his robes torn, his hand trembling, yet he still clutched the battered Transfiguration book. With a grim expression, Lucius thrust the book into Ginny's arms. "Here, hold on to your little book. This is the best Arthur Weasley can give his daughter." Robin pushed forward and opened the cover. The clasps were broken, but there was nothing concealed inside. He checked the chipped cauldron and the toppled piles of books. No black diary, no hidden object, nothing. He remembered the rumor that had circulated later, that in Flourish and Blots, Lucius had used the chaos to slip Lord Voldemort's diary into Ginny's Transfiguration textbook, and that the diary's 16-year-old memory had taken hold of her. But the book in Ginny's hands was empty. "What are you looking for?" Lucius asked coldly, watching him. "Oh, nothing. I only reached for something I thought I'd lost when the shelf fell," Robin said smoothly. Lucius glanced at the disordered shelves, shrugged off Hagrid's large hand, as if impatient with the scene, and led Draco out of the shop. They swept past the doorway, leaving a trail of scorn behind them. Arthur, still breathless, looked at Robin. "What did you lose?" "Nothing," Robin said simply. "I was bluffing." Ginny looked up at him, worried. "Why were you looking through my Transfiguration textbook and my cauldron?" The way Lucius had stared at them had unnerved her. She was afraid he might have hurt Robin for trying to pry. Robin gave a faint smile. "Just being careful." Ginny smiled back, then bent to help gather the books that littered the floor. 20 minutes later, the group, having collectively restored Flourish and Blots to its original state, walked down Diagon Alley. "Arthur, look at the example you're setting for the children, fighting in public. What will Lockhart think of us?" Mrs. Weasley scolded, poking Arthur's chest. She was still fuming. "He loved it," Arthur protested. "When George and I were propping up the shelves, I heard him ask Thalandra if he could include the two wizards fighting in his new book signing report. Said it'd cause a sensation and sell papers for the Daily Prophet." "Fred, stop joking. Ginny, come on. Let's get you some robes." Ginny pulled a yellow cloth bag from her pocket and told Mrs. Weasley about Robin's back-to-school gift. Arthur took the bag and, with a quick examination charm, peered at it. This really isn't an undetectable extension charm. The magical signature on it is very odd. I'll study it properly when I get home. Maybe I can—" "Arthur, haven't you caused enough trouble already?" Mrs. Weasley snapped, snatching the bag and stuffing it back into Ginny's pocket. Then she turned to Robin beside her. "Robin, you've spent far too much again." "It's nothing," Robin said lightly. They continued toward the exit of Diagon Alley, browsing the window displays. After a short while, Robin noticed Hermione seemed off. She trailed weakly behind the group, barely responding when spoken to, and her brown eyes kept darting, whether on purpose or not, toward Ginny's pocket. Jealousy, of course. Realizing why Hermione was upset, Robin quietly hatched a plan to cheer her up. Half an hour later, while the adults browsed a scarf shop and the children dashed into a Quidditch boutique, Robin slipped Hermione into a quiet alley. "Are you upset?" he asked. "I met Lockhart," Hermione said, with exaggerated emphasis on the words, "and I even got a special gift from him. I'm in a very good mood." She turned her back to him. With a soft, shimmering sound, a light purple crystal necklace patterned with lilies of the valley descended into view. "Do you like it?" Robin asked. Hermione hid her surprise and replied flatly, "That has to be one of those free gifts shops give when you buy something expensive, right?" "Wrong. I had this custom made at Fillier's Jewelers 2 months ago while I was in London. I just picked it up this morning. I was going to give it to you at the start of term feast on September 1st. "So why give it to me now?" Hermione asked, turning it over and feeling the little flowers. A smile she couldn't suppress crept across her face. Robin feigned nonchalance. "If I hadn't given it now, I'm afraid I wouldn't have had the chance. I wanted to cheer you up, and I brought you something else." Hermione took the small pouch, even though she already suspected what it was. It was a pale purple drawstring bag, about half the size of a palm, the fabric smooth as silk. The bottom corner was embroidered with bellflowers, a butterfly perched on one bloom. The drawstrings were finished with light purple pearls. "This is a magic bag," Robin explained. "Capacity about 25 meters. I filled it with 10 books I thought you'd like." Hermione dug in and pulled out 6 titles in quick succession. Challenge Your Brain, 1,000 Reasoning Games, Reverse Thinking, A Logic Master, How to Discern a Hypocrite. She loved pale purple, bellflowers, logical puzzles, and odd little books. The gifts touched her deeply. She tucked the books back into the bag and, eyes shining, demanded, "How did you know what I wanted?" Robin shrugged, pretending to be casual. "I guessed." "Liar." She glared at him, then turned and walked back toward the main street with her chin held high. The expression on her face, a half glare, half smile, told him everything. She was pleased. Sure enough, once they returned to Diagon Alley, Hermione hurried into the boutique, enthusiastically recommending a light purple floral scarf to Mrs. Granger. By 4 in the afternoon, feet aching from a day of walking, the whole party returned to the leaky cauldron. As they said their goodbyes, Robin once more warned Harry to be careful around Dobby and reminded Ginny and Mrs. Weasley that the yellow cloth bag would be useful for back-to-school packing. After Harry and the Weasleys had gone back to the burrow via flu powder, Hermione hugged Robin tightly. "Thank you, I love your gifts. See you on September 1st. She then followed her parents toward the street where a carriage awaited. Robin walked on toward the end of the lane. A few dozen meters later, a loud owl cry split the air above him. He looked up to see an owl perched on a bookstore sign, its head cocked at an impossible angle. "Da pang!" he called. The fat bird blinked at him, then flapped and flew eastward. Robin hurried after it. 2 hours later, they were deep in the woodland of Hyde Park. The owl settled on an oak branch and called out 3 loud squawks. The nearby bushes, taller than a person, rustled wildly, and a reedy, duck-like voice called from the center. "Who's out there?" "Me," Robin answered, leaning against the tree. Branches whipped aside, and Grant burst out of the undergrowth, sliding to a stop at Robin's feet and fawning. "Oh, master, my most esteemed master, you are so kind, so benevolent, so—" "Stop! Get to the point," Robin interrupted. "Master, please." Grant began again, but a softer voice interrupted. "Grant, let me speak." A garden gnome, gentle-faced and several sizes smaller than Grant, swayed out from the bushes. "Are you Lalisa Rolante?" Robin asked. "Yes," she cried, and Grant scuttled over to her. "You two," Robin began, drawing the word out. Grant rolled up his sleeve to show a 15-centimeter purplish-red scar and boasted, "A month ago, Lalisa was snatched by a coyote while out for a stroll. When I heard, I chased it into the woods and flattened its head with a punch. That night, Lalisa and I tried the thing in the painting. Woo." Lalisa clapped a hand over his mouth, both shy and annoyed. "Don't listen to him. The wolf died from the fall, and that night we only held hands. I don't want to stay in Otteryson Catchpole anymore. I want to come with Grant," she added, wiping away a tear. "But Grant said there's a gloomy, terrifying forest by the Hogwarts vegetable patch, full of dangerous monsters. Oh, master, my most esteemed master, you are so kind." "Stop," Robin grinned. Coincidentally, I'm planning to buy a house in the village. You two can help me look after the yard. Lelisa wiped her cheeks and hugged Grant in excitement. As evening fell, Robin produced a pile of hamburgers, canned food, and fruit. After they ate their fill, under the cover of night, he took to the air with them and flew north towards Scotland. September 1st, afternoon. Outskirts of Hogsmeade Village, a 3-story house with a courtyard, Robin Lestrange's study on the 2nd floor. Robin tapped his fingers on a book, staring at the mess on his desk with a mixture of irritation and resignation. Perched on the desk was a black dragon the size of a diary, wagging its tail at a bamboo pencil holder and making bleating noises like a lamb. So comfortable, so very comfortable, it cooed. Norbert, you're a girl. Mind your image. The dragon snuffled back. Norbert isn't a girl. Norbert is a female dragon. Rubbing my butt to leave a scent is Norbert's nature. In the wild, we dragons use it to mark territory, make friends, record our moods. So comfortable. Ba, it nosed the pen holder, smacked its lips, and muttered, Today's scent diary says, this afternoon's class was so boring. Let's find something fun to play with. With a few quick steps, it charged, sent the pencil holder crashing, chewed the pencils into splinters, then used its tail like a broom to sweep every teacup, saucer, pen holder, and book off the desk. After ransacking the surface, it flapped to the window, grabbed the curtain, and swung like a pendulum, shouting, Charge, knight! Draw your holy sword, slay the evil dragon, rescue the princess, claim the bounty and the crown. Charge, Knight Norbert! Robin watched, blinking slowly. A dragon who dreamed of becoming a dragon-slaying knight, Norbert was something else. He scooped the pencil remains off a page and flung them at the bamboo basket by the money tree pot. The splinters pinged against the basket. De Ben-Hu, stop feeding Norbert those crazy ideas. Robin had assumed the multi-language communication function of his magic cube worked only for him, but he discovered, by accident, that other creatures inside the cube could understand and speak across languages as well. Da Ben-Hu, the white fox, had been a bad influence, as usual. The fox spat out a ruffled bird doll, rested its head on the basket rim, and sniffed, amused. Oh, please, leaving a scent isn't the same as peeing or pooping everywhere, so be grateful. And ridgeback dragons are a warlike bunch. Your good baby readings won't interest them. You need something dramatic with violent fights. Robin closed his book and, mocking the fox, rested his chin on it. De Ben-Hu, foxes are canids, compared to dogs, which nose is more sensitive. What do you mean? The fox frowned. You didn't smell Norbert's mess on the bird doll? Oh, right. This morning's scent diary said this morning's herringkin was so stinky. Robin tapped the cover of his cub's textbook, the title in 6 bold letters, I Can Be Hygienic, which seemed to offend the fox. It spat a few feathers, scampered to the fish tank to rinse its mouth, then, eyes reddening, lunged at the black dragon on the curtain. In a heartbeat, the 2 cubs, one black, one white, crashed to the floor and began wrestling. The fox's moves were pure canine, bared teeth, biting, front paws raking, hind legs kicking like mad. The black dragon answered with a long-snouted bite, claws locking at the throat, and a tail that thumped and bashed. Robin pulled a pen and a scrap of paper from the shelf and idly sketched stick figures of the scuffle. He didn't intervene for 3 reasons. They weren't using magic, they were holding back so nothing lethal would happen, and frankly, they both deserved it. As he drew the 7th frame, white fox bites corner, black dragon smacks fox's tail, Nagini slipped in and announced someone had come to visit, an old man with pupils the size of green beans and bluish whites to his eyes, holding a gift. Pupils the size of green beans and bluish whites? It could only be Kenzio, the owner of the skunk and cattail magical artifacts shop down by the Hogshead pub. Robin went downstairs, already knowing who it would be, and asked the old man in black, Who are you? The old man smiled as if they'd met a dozen times. Don't pretend this is the first time. I'm Kenzio. I'm not blind. You come to my shop every 2 or 3 weeks to dig for treasures. Your disguises are good, but you come too often. Robin rubbed the tip of his nose. What do you want? You're a regular. 11 visits a year, a total spend of 2,113 galleons, 15 sickles, and 20 nuts. A major customer deserves a housewarming gift. He handed Robin a small box, about 2 palms across, tied with a ruffled rainbow-colored ribbon. The box itself was covered in overlapping gray scales the size of fingernails, its bronze handle mottled with rust. It looked very old. "Aren't you going to open it?" Kenzio asked. Robin lifted the lid. Nestled on an egg carton-like sponge pad were 100 cashew-shaped pale green objects. He picked one up. It felt like jade, translucent, warm, and silky. "What is this?" "I don't know." Kenzio shrugged. 50 years ago, while climbing Mount Beagle, I was hit by an avalanche and fell into a crevasse. Deep in the ice, I found this box. I hauled it out, studied it for a while, then, frustrated, flung it into storage. I figured you'd appreciate something odd, so I retrieved it. A mysterious box, strange packaging, unknown properties, the perfect treasure. Robin activated his magic scan to check the object's power. When the icon appeared, he nearly dropped his jaw. He'd seen values like 1, 100, even 500, but never. "You don't like it?" Kenzio began, genuinely surprised. "I'm over 100 years old, and I've never met someone who didn't." "I like it. I really like it." "Good." Kenzio nodded and turned to leave. Then, halfway down the courtyard path, he stopped, looked back, and said, deadpan, "You haven't paid." Robin blinked. "The ribbon's the real gift," Kenzio went on. "Different colored ribbons mean different things. I searched long and hard for a rainbow ribbon and paired it with something even harder to find." "You mean the ribbon is the gift, and the box isn't?" Robin asked incredulously. "That's right. If you want to keep the box, it will cost you 200 galleons." Robin could only stare as Kenzio strolled off, humming to himself, leaving the little box and its inscrutable, glowing contents on the desk. Robin remembered clearly that he had never given Kenzio his name, neither the first time he went to the shop nor during their more recent conversation. The house had been bought in Nagini's name. Whatever Kenzio was planning, it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. Still, Robin was curious about the green waste beads. The Rubik's Cube had labeled them. After paying 200 galleons and watching Kenzio leave, Robin took the gray box down to the basement. He used tweezers to lift a single bead onto a tray and began a string of tests. A bright light through the bead revealed only that it was translucent. A jet of conjured flame didn't make it glow red or heat up. To the touch, it remained warm and slightly moist. Dropped into boiling water, it sank to the bottom with no reaction. He tried sawing at it. The blade's teeth curled, but the bead's surface showed no scratches. A drop of concentrated sulfuric acid produced no bubbles and left it uncorroded. He was just about to look for the wizarding equivalent of the hydraulic press the previous owner had mentioned when someone knocked at the front door. "What's wrong?" he asked as he opened it. "It's 7 o'clock. If we don't leave now, we'll miss the welcoming feast," Nagini reminded him. Robin hurried up to the first floor and found that it was already dark outside. On the second floor, he scooped the fox and the dragon, both asleep in the money tree pot, into the Rubik's Cube, tidied the place quickly, and told Nagini to keep an eye on the house. Then he slipped back to Hogwarts through the shrieking shack, Whomping Willow tunnel. Creak. He pushed open the oak door into the dim entrance hall and happened to see Professor McGonagall ushering the new students into a small room on the first floor. He slipped through the door at his right, squeezed through the gap, and entered the great hall. Half the staff table was empty, but the 4 long student tables were full, the buzz of holiday tales and whispers filling the room. Hermione spotted him at the door and waved vigorously. "If you hadn't shown up," she said as he slid into the seat, "I'd have thought you weren't coming." "Did you come by train?" Ron asked. "I didn't see you." "No train," Robin said. "I came another way." "You definitely don't know about what happened at Platform 9 3/4 today," Ron said, leaning in. "What happened?" Robin asked. Having just come through the secret passage and seen the Humping Willow unmarked and undamaged, he already suspected the usual story about Dobby and the flying car had gone differently. "At 11:45 this morning, the passage just closed," Ron whispered. "The station staff worked for ages to reopen it, and eventually they did, but I always had the feeling it wasn't them who fixed it." Harry frowned and picked up the thought that whoever closed the passage simply withdrew their control over it. "Dobby didn't give up trying to keep me from coming back to school," Ron said. "George and I were only 2 seconds apart. He got through fine, and I hit a solid wall." Mr. Weasley said house elf magic is no weaker than wizarding magic, Harry added. Between that and what happened the night Uncle Vernon hosted the Builders, it's very likely Dobby shut the passage. But did he act on his own? Hermione's question hung in the air. At that moment, McGonagall returned and led the first years into the Great Hall. After consulting with Dumbledore, she placed a small stool before them and set the old patched sorting hat on it. The sorting ceremony began. The nervous new students sat on the stool in turn, the hat whispered its verdicts, and each fledgling strode to their house table to cheers. When the last new student took their place at the Hufflepuff table, McGonagall rolled up her list, picked up the hat, and removed the stool. Dumbledore rose to speak, and with a casual wave, the empty plates and goblets filled instantly with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, lamb chops, milk, and more. After the feast, the new students followed their prefects on a tour, while older students headed back to their towers. When Robin, Harry, and Ron reached the Gryffindor dormitory, they found the sign on the door had been changed from first years to second years. Inside, nothing else had altered. Ron's unfinished charms homework still lay where he'd left it. Robin. Ron dragged the last syllable out as he brushed off his notebook. No way, Robin said, and refused. Ron turned pleadingly to Harry. Harry pulled a notebook from his trunk. You can copy mine, he said. Change some of the sentences when you do, although I made a lot of it up too. Thanks, Ron said gratefully. The next morning in the Great Hall, Professor McGonagall came in from the entrance with the class timetables and handed them out before leaving in a hurry. Robin pored over his schedule. Monday morning, herbology, transfiguration. Afternoon, defense against the dark arts. Evening, astronomy. Tuesday morning, herbology. Afternoon, transfiguration and charms. Wednesday morning, charms and potions. Afternoon, history of magic. Thursday morning, transfiguration. Afternoon, a double potions period. Friday morning, charms. Afternoon, herbology and defense against the dark arts. The second-year timetable felt fuller than the first, but not exhausting. After a short rest, they gathered their herbology textbooks and left the castle together. The greenhouse doors were still closed when they arrived, and while they chatted with Neville, Seamus, and Dean, Professor Sprout appeared with a jangling bunch of keys. Today's class is in Greenhouse 3, she announced, smiling as she led them toward the row of glass houses. Fred says there's a bad-tempered, man-eating plant in Greenhouse 3, Ron said nervously. If you don't bow when you pass it, it'll swallow you until you're purple from holding your breath, and only then it'll let you go. Do you really believe, Fred? Robin muttered. Sprout selected a large key and opened the greenhouse door. Enter one at a time. Watch your step, and don't touch anything without my permission. Some plants look harmless, but can put you in the infirmary for a week if you meddle with them. The moment Robin stepped inside, he was hit by a heady blend of dry manure, damp earth, flowers, and herbs. It was not a pleasant smell, but it was far from overwhelming, enough to tell him he was firmly back at school. From the arched ceiling of the greenhouse hung trumpet-shaped purple flowers the size of umbrellas. Thin vines crawled up the glass walls, their leaves shimmering green and each as large as an adult's palm. As they drew closer, red flowers with rings of sharp teeth burst from the layers of foliage and let out a grating, eerie chuckle right by their ears. Ron jumped at the sound and grabbed Robin's arm, hunching down and refusing to look around. He moved with Robin to the inner side of the greenhouse, to the edge of a long flower bed, and only relaxed when the vines on both sides thinned out. Professor Sprout stood at the far end of the bed, wearing a patched hat and standing behind a half-meter-high stool. On the stool were about 20 pairs of colorful furry earmuffs. A Barbie pink pair was the most conspicuous. Find seats first, she told them. She strapped on dragon-hide gloves, slapped away a dark red plant that had begun climbing her shoulder, and then announced, "Today we are learning how to repot mandrakes. But before we start properly, I'll test your holiday reading. Robin, you, tell me the characteristics of a mandrake." Robin stood. Mandrake, or mandragora, has pain-relieving, hallucinogenic, hypnotic, and aphrodisiac properties. It's a powerful restorative too, able to return someone who's been transfigured or put under a spell to their original state. He stamped his point with a grin. I'm not making this up. The Bible even records that Reuben brought mandrakes to his mother Leah, who'd been unable to conceive for a while. The mandrakes rekindled Jacob's desire for Leah, and she conceived again. Excellent, Sprout said. 5 points to Gryffindor. Most antidotes are made with mandrakes. Sprout continued, but they're dangerous. Hermione, what's the danger? Their cry, Hermione answered without hesitation. If someone hears a mandrake's cry, they may become dizzy and faint, or at worst, die instantly. Very good. Another 5 points to Gryffindor. Sprout pointed to the deep ceramic pots along the bed. Those are mandrake seedlings. The students left their seats and pressed forward to look. Up close, the seedlings, apart from green leaves with a touch of purple, looked no different from tobacco plants. Come and get a pair of earmuffs, Sprout called. Everyone crowded round the stool. In the end, the Barbie pink earmuffs stayed in Sprout's hands. The seedlings' cries aren't fatal at this stage, but they can cause hours of unconsciousness. If you want to make the first class tomorrow, wear your earmuffs properly. After my demonstration, once it's safe, I'll give you 2 thumbs up. Only then may you take them off. Put them on now. Robin followed orders and slipped the earmuffs over his ears. Sound dropped away instantly. The greenhouse grew muffled and serene. He thought they'd make a godsend for anyone with noise sensitivity or insomnia. Sprout put on her own pink earmuffs, rolled her sleeves high, pressed one hand on a ceramic pot, gripped the stem at its base with the other, and heaved. Instead of a root with whiskers, what came from the soil was a wrinkled, ugly baby, its leaves sprouting from its head like hair. Pale green skin freckled with brown spots, limbs flailing wildly, mouth gaping, tears spattered from its eye slits. It was screaming its head off. Sprout put the little thing into a slightly larger flower pot, then packed in gravel, rich soil, and finally moist ash soil until only the tuft of green leaves showed. She smoothed and pressed the soil with her hand, brushed dirt off her gloves, and gave the class 2 thumbs up. The students took off their earmuffs. Work in pairs, she instructed. Prepare large pots, gravel, and rich soil. Be careful of the poisonous tentacles near the rich soil. They haven't been well behaved lately. Robin went to a corner and used a shovel to push away spiky, poisonous tentacles that tried to jab him, shoveled a bucket of rich soil, and returned to the bed. Robin, shall I pull this one? Hermione asked, touching the leaves and eager to try. Go ahead, he said. After everyone finished preparing, Sprout explained the repotting steps, and the students put their earmuffs back on. The demonstration had made it look easy. In practice, it was anything but. Hermione grabbed a stem with both hands, heaved and tugged until the little thing came free. The mandrake kicked its feet in the air, its sharp nails cutting at the air. It twisted violently, trying to wrench free from her hands. Hermione recoiled, her wrists trembling. Robin steadied her, shoved the screaming plant into the larger pot, and used the shovel to layer gravel, rich soil, and ash soil. Hermione smoothed and pressed the surface. By the end of class, most of the students were sweating, exhausted, and smudged with black and gray soil. After a hot shower back at the castle, they grabbed their books and hurried off to Transfiguration. Professor McGonagall finished the theory and set them to work. Turn a beetle into a button. Robin was lucky. After 1 or 2 tries, the dark beetle on his desk became a blue agate button. Hermione had similar success. Others were less fortunate. Neville's beetle, like his toad Trevor, escaped and scuttled around the classroom. Neville chased it with his wand but couldn't catch it, and it was later accidentally crushed by Dean. Seamus's transfiguration was only half successful. The bug was a button on its underside and a beetle on top, clacking as it crawled. Ron's beetle exploded under the curse, releasing a thick, gray-brown smoke that smelled of an ancient privy and left him coughing. Harry, his wand work and pronunciation correct, didn't turn his beetle into a button. Instead, it became petrified. Seamus borrowed Harry's beetle to show Neville and Dean, and they examined the strange hardened insect with puzzled frowns. When Transfiguration ended, they went to the Great Hall for lunch and then back up to the Gryffindor common room to relax. Hermione sunk contentedly into an armchair, absorbed in Vacation with a Hag. Harry and Ron played wizard's chess. Robin sat staring at a skinny, gray-haired boy with a muggle camera who was crouched behind an armchair not far away. 127. Damn, Death Eaters are so inhumane. A muggle camera, pale hair, scrawny Gryffindor robe. It must be Colin Creevey, Harry's most loyal young fan. Harry remembered the details from the stories. Colin had been petrified by the basilisk in his first year and restored with Mandrake Potion. At 14, he joined Dumbledore's army to learn defense against the dark arts and resist Umbridge. He'd later sneaked back into Hogwarts and, tragically, would die in a chaotic battle with Death Eaters at just 16. Robin felt a pang of helplessness at that thought. 16, not even 17. Those Death Eaters were truly monstrous. A blinding flash of light drew Harry and Ron's attention to the armchair. A freckled, enthusiastic boy with a camera stepped forward, cheeks flushed. "Hello, Harry Potter. My name's Colin Creevey. I was sorted into Gryffindor last night. See, can I take a picture of you?" "You already did?" Harry said without much expression. Colin's excitement didn't dim. He babbled on, breathless. Sorry, I was too excited. That angle was perfect. I couldn't help pressing the shutter. On the train, lots of people were talking about you. How you escaped the Dark Lord's clutches, how you made him disappear, the lightning scar, how you protected the Philosopher's Stone." He waved at Harry's hair, as if searching for a scar. "My roommate says if you spill developing fluid on photos, the people in them will move. My dad's a milkman. He's a muggle and can't come here. I want to take pictures to send to him. Can I get a picture with you? And could you sign it?" Harry looked at the eager boy's pleading face and felt torn. Before he could answer, Robin nudged him and silently pointed to the large clock on the wall. Harry remembered an excuse at once. "Sorry, it's already 2 o'clock. I have to get to class." He gathered 7 of Lockhart's books and headed for the portrait hole. Robin and the others grabbed their own textbooks and followed. The Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom was larger and higher than the others, its walls much thicker. A curved stone staircase by the teacher's platform led to a doorway on the second floor. Hanging beside it was a portrait of Gilderoy Lockhart grinning broadly. From the ceiling, a complete dragon skeleton dangled by iron chains. They took adjacent seats. Shortly after, Lockhart swept onto the circular platform on the second floor, his hair gleaming like a polished wave. As he descended the stairs, he flashed a dazzling smile. "Allow me to introduce your new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Me, Gilderoy Lockhart, 3rd Class Order of Merlin, honorary member of the Anti-Dark Arts League, and 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile." He pretended to be modest about it. "I'm not here to teach you how to win fame. I'm here to teach you how to face your deepest fears and combat the most malevolent creatures. And of course, as long as I'm present, you will be perfectly safe." Lockhart moved behind the lectern, bent, and pulled out a large cage draped in black cloth. He set it on the table and tapped it. The cage shuddered. The sound of sharp teeth grinding on metal came from within. The students below the platform stiffened. Neville hunched and buried his face behind a pile of books. Dean leaned away from the cage. Ron clutched Robin's arm, his lashes fluttering with unease. Lockhart, delighted by the reaction, wagged a finger and lowered his voice. "When I lift the cover, please don't scream. That will only provoke them." He whipped off the cloth. The cage contained about 20 Cornish pixies. They were iron blue skin, 20 to 25 centimeters tall, with pointed faces, large round eyes, big ears, and little antennae on their heads. As soon as the cover came off, they shrieked, rattled the bars, and then launched themselves into the classroom. The noise was louder than 100 ducks at once. "Cornish pixies," someone snorted from the front row. Seamus laughed, shaking. "They're not very dangerous, are they?" Lockhart smiled indulgently. "Oh no, don't be so sure. Cornish pixies are a nuisance, destructive as a poltergeist. Let's see how you handle them." He opened the cage door. The pixies exploded into the room like tiny rockets. 2 grabbed Neville by the ears, hauled him to the ceiling, and gently tossed him toward the chandelier, where he dangled by an iron hook. 3 smashed windows and scooped up the glass, scattering shards everywhere. 2 knocked over ink bottles and splattered the walls with black blots. 2 tore up books and homework. Even Lockhart's portrait was shredded. Others yanked at robes and pulled at hair. Robin squinted, chose the biggest, strongest-looking pixie, and grabbed the thickest book he could find. He charged and hit the pixie with a solid thwack. The bruised creature snarled, bared its jagged teeth, and dove at him. Robin rolled the book into a makeshift club, channeling a mountain giant's club swing, and brought it down hard. The pixie flew 5 or 6 meters and slammed into the back wall. It staggered to its feet, wounded wings flapping, then crawled toward Robin with a shard of glass in hand, intent on stabbing. When it lunged and the jagged glass was only a foot from his chest, Robin mustered his strength and struck it down. The pixie hit the floor and bled profusely, dragging itself toward his ankle. Robin drew his ebony wand and, voice steady, barked, "Petrificus totalis!" The pixie stiffened instantly. Its chest puffed and then sucked in, its legs locked together as if welded, its arms snapped to its sides, even its wings snapped back against its shoulder blades. It was frozen, motionless as a wooden figurine. Robin felt the totem at the base of his left collarbone flare with heat and ache. He kicked it under an overturned desk, murmured a soft incantation to collect the totem into the pocket-sized Rubik's Cube he kept, and then scanned the chaotic classroom to take stock of the battle. Robin saw a pixie tugging at Harry's hair while Hermione, clutching a thick book, helped Harry swat it away. Neville hit the floor with a thud. Dean hauled him aside. Seamus wrestled with a stubborn doorknob while Dean swung a three-legged stool like a club to drive off the pixies. Lockhart, watching everything with theatrical horror, bellowed, "Come on, everyone, work together, drive them into the cage. They're only—" The back of his robe ripped. He rolled up his sleeves, flourished his wand, and shouted, "Annoying pests, vanish all!" The incantation drowned half the noise in the classroom, but Lockhart's wand didn't respond. A pixie with gleaming black grape-like eyes snatched it, flew up to the ceiling, and began tapping the chains with the wand. After a few taps, blue sparks shot from the tip. The chains crackled and then, with a terrible snap, broke. The massive dragon skeleton trembled and came down. Robin saw Ron, waving his wand, trying to fend off the pixies, standing directly beneath the falling bones. For a moment, Ron froze. If the bones hit him, he'd be crushed. Robin lunged, grabbed Ron's wrist, and dragged him toward the back wall. The dragon skeleton hit the floor behind them with a thunderous bang and the scatter of snapping bones. "Good thing we moved," Robin panted, turning to look at the wreckage. No, my wand's gone." Ron scrambled into the pile of bones. After frantic digging, he found it beneath a wing bone, but it was almost snapped in two, the upper half hung by a few splinters. Bang! Seamus finally forced the door open. "Get out!" he shouted. Everyone poured through the doorway. Soon only Robin's little group remained in the classroom. Lockhart clambered up to the circular balcony on the second floor and called down, "I assign the 4 of you to catch the remaining pixies and put them back in the cage." He then dashed out of the room. "What a useless show-off," Ron muttered, looking up at the balcony. "Nonsense," Hermione protested. "Lockhart is very powerful. His books say he's defeated ghouls, trolls, vampires, and werewolves. He's letting the pixies cause a bit of trouble on purpose, giving us a practical lesson." "What can we do?" Harry said. "They're too fast. Our wands can't even touch them." A pixie nimbly dodged Harry's spell, bared its teeth, and made a face at him. "Exactly." Ron groaned. "I've been waving my wand under those bones forever and didn't hit a single one." Robin reached into his cloth bag, drew a broomstick, and rolled a thick book into a tube. He hopped on the broom. "I'll stun them. Then you lot cast. Aim while they're disoriented." "Okay," Harry said. Robin pushed off with his feet and rose into the air. Using a sweeping, practiced motion, he cut through every corner of the classroom, knocking pixie after pixie out of the air. Seeing them dazed, Harry and Hermione waved their wands, casting freezing charms or petrificus totalis. Ron tried to help, but his broken wand barely cooperated. He cast half a dozen spells and only managed to make his wrist ache in a cloud of thick smoke. Nothing hit home. He resorted to picking up the iron cage and collecting the frozen or petrified pixies by hand. When the last active pixie had been rounded up, the group gathered their things and left. Broken windows, overturned desks, and scattered dragon bones were no longer their concern. That night, as the curtains of his narrow bed fell, Robin's consciousness slipped into his sea of consciousness. He stared at the giant Rubik's Cube floating in that inner space, and on the purple face saw a tiny island by a dark sea. There, curled up and oafish-looking, was the pixie he'd named in his head. He moved a finger and guided his thought. The purple square floated closer. He reached out, prodded the pixie totem, and and a light screen appeared with its information. Name, none. Species, Cornwall pixie, level B, personality. Noisy, mischievous, cunning, loves pranks, grabbing his ears, tossing people onto treetops and roofs. Physical condition, weak under Petrificus totalis, internal organ damage, multiple rib and wing bone fractures. Treatment, 2 months. Skills, extreme dodge, can evade attacks 3 times in a row. Dizziness, can disorient an enemy for 10 seconds. Magic power, 1,000. Combat power, 2,000. Combat power higher than magic power, Robin thought. No wonder it had been such a nuisance. He tapped the totem and named the pixie Lying Flat. He let his consciousness slip back out. Somewhere in the dormitory, Ron mumbled in his sleep, "Stupid, broken wand, useless thing." And Robin drifted into real sleep. The days that followed were ordinary. Classes, homework, sleep. Robin's contribution in lessons earned Gryffindor 55 house points in total. But not everything was smooth. The logic puzzle books he'd given Hermione over the summer sat unread. She devoted every spare minute to Lockhart's books. Robin suspected the more starstruck she was now, the harder she'd fall when her idol eventually turned out to be a fraud. Harry was stuck with his admirer, Colin Creevey, who seemed to pop up 6 or 7 times a day. Eventually, Harry learned to refuse pictures and autographs without prompting. "Sorry, I have urgent matters to attend to." Ron took a roll of magic tape and tightly bound the broken section of his wand, but it still misbehaved. In Friday's charms class, his wand flew out of his hand in a puff of white smoke and smacked Professor Phileas Flitwick right on the forehead. Flitwick ended the lesson with a pulsating green bump, looking rather less sprightly than usual. Robin had planned to sneak back to the village over the weekend to teach the younger kids and finish his research on the green waste beads, but plans changed. On Friday evening, Wood told him and Harry they would have Quidditch practice over the weekend. Saturday dawned early. After breakfast, Robin and Harry changed into their scarlet robes, grabbed their brooms, and followed Wood and the others down the corridor toward the stadium. Wood, brimming with energy, jabbed a finger at the air. "I spent the whole summer designing a new training plan," he said. "To make it easier to explain, I drew a diagram of the pitch. With a flick of my wand, the lines, arrows, circles, and crosses will rise into the air as a 3-dimensional model. To win the Quidditch Cup, we must." He trailed off, carried along by his own excitement, his red robe flaring behind him as he hurried on. 129. Mouth slugs unexpectedly. As soon as Robin and his group came through the entrance, they saw the Slytherin team in green robes enter from a side gate. "Flint, Gryffindor has booked the pitch today. Please leave immediately," Wood snapped, frowning. Flint scanned the pitch and replied with a sly grin. "The pitch is big, Wood. But I booked it. I have the booking slip from Wednesday morning." "So what? I have special permission from the head of house." Flint produced a roll of parchment with exaggerated flourish. Robin leaned closer with Wood to read it. "I, Professor Severus Snape, hereby grant the Slytherin team permission to use the pitch today to train their new seeker." "Who's the new seeker?" Wood demanded, rolling the parchment back up. Flint and Pusey stepped aside, and a boy with slicked-back, greasy hair came forward between the teams. The same smug smile that spread across Flint's face was on the boy's pale, pointed face. "Isn't he Lucius Malfoy's son?" George looked him up and down and sneered. "Since you mentioned Mr. Lucius Malfoy, let me show you the generous gift he gave the Slytherin team." Flint called out, and the players in green robes all raised their new brooms in unison. The broom heads were glossy black, the bristles bound with polished steel bands. Along the top of each shaft, golden letters glowed. Nimbus 2001. Flint rubbed the golden logo with a smug little flourish. "This is the latest model in the Nimbus series, out just this August. It's said to be far faster than the old Nimbus 2000. He paused, his gaze cutting repeatedly to the brooms in Fred and George's hands. "Heh, old-fashioned cleansweep. What's the point? The brooms I use to sweep my floors perform better than a cleansweep 5. Robin felt the urge to hit him with another bat and smash those buck teeth. "Flint," he said calmly, "Quidditch is about flying skill and playing skill. With bad technique, you could ride a broken bamboo pole, and I'd still wipe the floor with you." Robin's words were like a drumbeat, reviving the Gryffindor player's confidence. "That's right. Bad technique makes the best equipment useless, Wood added pointedly. Flint's face soured. He remembered how he'd lost a front tooth to a bludger last year. Just then, Ron and Hermione arrived, carrying bread smeared with jam. What's going on? Why is everyone gathered here? Malfoy, what are you doing here? And in Quidditch robes? Ron's face registered the same shock that a thunderbolt would bring. Malfoy held up a Nimbus 2001 and boasted, "Because I'm the new Slytherin Seeker, and everyone's gathered here to admire the back-to-school present my father gave the team. Look, the latest Nimbus 2001. Beautiful, isn't it? If Gryffindor needs a few galleons for new brooms, it's not impossible to come up with them." He looked at Fred and George. "You could auction those Cleansweep 5s off. I bet the Quidditch Museum would pay well." At least no one on Gryffindor bought their way onto the team. They got in on skill. Hermione shot back, stepping forward. Malfoy's lip curled. He began to curse viciously. "No one was talking to you, you stinking little mud." He cut off abruptly when he saw Robin standing beside Hermione, staring at him with a cold, blade-like gaze. At the tip of Robin's ebony wand hovered 7 or 8 tiny, purple, venomous needles. Malfoy swallowed his curse and turned on Ron. "Heh, you pauper. Your wand's been broken for ages, hasn't it? Your parents still haven't bought you a new one, trying to pinch pennies and starve with a broken." Ron snatched out his wand. "Malfoy, you'll pay for that!" Bang! A sharp bang echoed across the pitch. A dazzling green light spat from the end of Ron's old wand. The blast struck Ron in the abdomen. He stumbled backward 3 or 4 steps and fell to the grass. "Are you all right, Ron?" Harry asked, alarmed. Ron puffed his cheeks, heaved, turned over with a great hiccup, and several slimy, dark gray slugs slid from his mouth onto the turf. The Slytherin players roared with laughter. The Gryffindor team watched Ron with concern. "Ah, how disgusting! Harry, can you help me turn him over?" Colin called excitedly, already holding his camera. "No, Colin, don't. Robin, let's take Ron to Hagrid. He knows a lot. He'll know what to do," someone suggested. "Okay." Robin helped Ron to his feet and supported him as they walked off. Harry and Hermione trailed close behind. As the 4 of them made for the vegetable patch in front of Hagrid's hut, they saw Lockhart come out of the door. "Quick, hide," Harry whispered. "Hide over there." Robin urged them behind the roadside bushes. From the hut's wooden doorway, Lockhart was saying something to Hagrid. "Hagrid, if you do as I say, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. If you can't handle them, come find me at the castle. I'd be happy to help, and perhaps I'll even generously give you a few of my books." With a flourish, he pushed the door closed. Lockhart awkwardly rubbed his nose, called "goodbye," and left the small yard. As soon as he was out of sight, Robin and the others dragged Ron up to the hut's door and knocked. Hagrid swung the door open. Anger showed on his face for a moment, but when he saw who was standing there, he broke into a relieved grin. "It's ye lot! Come in! Quick! Come in! Sit down. I'll make up some tea." Inside, Harry and Hermione eagerly explained about the slugs. Hagrid didn't seem too alarmed. He handed Ron a large aluminum bucket and told him to spit out as many slugs as he needed, then bustled off to put the kettle on. Robin scratched the heavy sleeping Fang behind the ear and looked around the little wooden hut. From the rafters hung chains with sharp hooks, from which swung bird cages, metal buckets, bamboo baskets, and coils of hemp rope. One corner held an enormous bed with a sofa chair and wooden stools nearby. A small stove for boiling and cooking sat in another corner, and beside it stood a low table, wiped clean from legs to tabletop. But on that otherwise tidy table sat a conspicuous, messy object, a large rooster with half its feathers plucked. There was no blood on the table, no feathers on the floor. Hagrid wouldn't hurt animals. The person who had done this was the one carrying Tom Riddle's diary. After the water boiled, Hagrid carried the teapot over, and as he poured, said, "Poor thing, there's nothing for it. That spell's the sort that has to wear off by itself." "Hagrid, why was Lockhart at your hut?" Harry asked, taking the teacup. Hagrid set the kettle back on the little table and scowled. "He came to show me how to stop water sprites from getting into wells, as if I didn't already know how. And he went on and on about how he beat werewolves, made pals with hags, and banished banshees. All hot air. If a single word of it were true, I'd eat me own boots." "I don't think you're right, Hagrid," Hermione said, a little sharply. I've read Lockhart's books. The duels in them are described so well. You can't write that unless you've seen it. Being able to talk big and scribble down stories doesn't mean you can actually do any of it, Hagrid grumbled, but he handed Hermione a plate piled with toffees. By the way, Harry, I heard you were giving out signed photos. Why didn't you send me one? I didn't, Harry protested. Hagrid, who told you that? It was Lockhart. He kept seeing Colin asking me for autographs. Aw, don't get yourself worked up. I was only joking, Hagrid said, chuckling. I know you wouldn't do that. Come on, let's go see what I've been growing. He clapped Harry on the shoulder and led the three of them out to the vegetable patch behind his hut. Hermione and Ron exchanged surprised looks at the sight of a good 20 deep orange pumpkins, each at least a meter across. Blimey, Ron said. What did you do to them? Hagrid looked pleased as punch. I didn't do anything nasty, just a bit of outside help, he said. Engorgement charms. By the end of October, they'll be as big as carriages, perfect for carving into jack-o'-lanterns for the Halloween feast. You used an engorgement charm? Hermione said admiringly. It worked well. Ginny was by the hut yesterday, Hagrid went on, glancing at Harry with a grin. She said she'd just arrived at school and fancied a wander. I reckon she was hoping to see someone. Harry felt his face go warm. The grounds get like this every start of term, Hagrid said as they walked back toward the hut. A lot of folk come by. Fred and George were here, looking for bugs to mash into a prank to chuck at Madame Norris. A little boy with a camera came by to take photos to send to his muggle father. Oliver Wood came to practice flying. He was up and down the slope on his broom nonstop. A strange girl with pale, silvery eyes wandered about gawping at everything. Oh, and I got a new fish. Fang don't like it. Which of you wants it? Harry and Hermione both shook their heads. Ron made a face, but then, seeing Hagrid's hopeful expression, couldn't say no. All right, I'll take it, he said. Hagrid went inside the hut and returned with an old wooden box. From it, he took a fish tank wrapped in a black cloth and set it on the small table. He peeled the cloth back. The tank was a glass cube, about 40 centimeters on each side. A layer of small white pebbles covered the bottom, and 2 beige anemones took up a good quarter of the space. Above them darted a tiny clownfish, no more than 5 centimeters long, a bright orange-red body striped with white bands edged in black like a little painted mask. When Ron tapped the glass, the fish zipped over and followed his finger wherever he moved. Ron drew a circle, and it looped perfectly. He pressed his hand to the surface, and it nosed up to suck his finger. Look, it likes you, Hagrid said, pleased. He handed Ron a small paper bag. Here, keep the food safe. Feed it 2 or 3 times a day, 5 to 7 pellets each time. If it swells up and doesn't get eaten, scoop the old stuff out. Take it while Fang's asleep, mind. Okay, Ron said, cradling the tank. They said goodbye to Hagrid and set off for the castle, Ron carrying the tank and Harry lugging an aluminum bucket Hagrid had given them. As soon as they passed through the oak door into the entrance hall, they nearly walked straight into Lockhart. 131. Fish, there is no gantry for you to jump here. Harry, I have something very important to discuss with you. Come, let's talk privately. Lockhart, flashing his pearly teeth, drew Harry aside and chattered on. Harry's face moved from confusion to shock and then to bewilderment before he gave a vague nod. What did he want you for? Ron asked when Harry returned. He asked me to help him write replies to his admirers. You agreed? I tried to refuse. Harry sighed and followed Robin and the others up the stairs. He left the common room reluctantly at 7:45 p.m. and didn't return to the dormitory until 11:40 p.m., looking utterly drained. He told Ron and Robin that while helping Lockhart compose responses, he had heard a hoarse, chilling whisper. Come, tear, kill you. That's odd. Lockhart said he didn't hear anything, Harry said, puzzled. Robin considered it. Lockhart wasn't a parcel-mouth. He couldn't have understood a snake's voice, even if one had spoken. Still, neither Ron nor Robin could think of any reason Lockhart would lie. They agreed to keep an eye out. Harry fell back into his bed, pulling the curtains closed. Robin caught Ron's eye and signaled not to disturb him. Robin had planned to sneak into Hogsmeade on Sunday, but Wood knocked on the dormitory door at dawn, calling everyone to Quidditch practice. Having skipped yesterday's session, missing again would be pushing it. Robin washed quickly and went down with Harry to the pitch, not expecting the training to last all day. By the time night fell, he stared at the dark red canopy of his four-poster and sighed. Oliver Wood truly was the king of Gryffindor's internal competition. Under Wood's new plan, the team had to gather every afternoon without classes and every weekend. If the pitch was booked, they would find an open space to hone their flying. At that rate, when would he ever get back to Hogsmeade? October 24th, 5 a.m. Heavy rain pounded the narrow, tall windows of the boys' dormitory. Using the downpour as cover, Robin dressed, left a note, and quietly slipped out of the tower carrying the fish tank. He had been waiting more than a month for a break from Wood's schedule. With weather like this, training would be impossible anyway. The castle and courtyard were empty in the pre-dawn gloom. Robin made his way to the Whomping Willow, slipped past its roots, and entered the secret passage. An hour later, he emerged through the narrow exit into the shrieking shack. He crossed the overgrown yard, noted the red sun rising in the distance, shrugged at the east side sun and west side rain, then pulled on a cloak, altered his disguise, and headed west. When he pushed the door open, Nagini sat in a rocking chair, elegant in a purple dress, reading a thick book titled Pattern, The Underlying Strategy of Business. Grant came in carrying a large bundle of green vegetables. "Grant, what are you doing?" Robin asked. Grant set the vegetables down, lifted his chin, and said proudly, "I'm bringing the beautiful, kind, and capable vegetables grown by Lalisa Rubus back to the kitchen." "Growing vegetables?" Robin echoed. "Yes!" Nagini shut the book and pointed to a patch in the yard. "Lalisa is very strong-willed. Grant says that back in Ottery St. Catchpole, she mostly ate wild roots. Sometimes she even sowed seeds by the river to grow wild vegetables. When she came here, she preferred not to take food for free, so I gave her a quarter of the front yard to cultivate. See, this patch of green-leafed vegetables is what Lalisa specifically planted for us. That smaller patch of yellow-leafed ones she grew more to suit Grant's tastes." Robin stared at the plot. It measured about 20 square meters and was edged with a short wooden fence. 3/4 of it was filled with vigorous green plants, sturdy stems, bright leaves, not a pest in sight. The remaining quarter held scrawny yellow-leaved plants, no more than 5 centimeters tall, their leaves wrinkled and withered as if they were near death. "Are those diseased?" Robin asked, raising an eyebrow. "No," Nagini smiled. "Lalisa calls it ulu-zi. It's a clever plant. Its yellow, withered leaves fool herbivores. The edible part is a tuber. Last week I dug one up in secret. It was the size of an apple and tasted sweet and sour like grapes. Lalisa says when an ulu-zi matures, it'll be as big as a bludger and as sweet as honey." Robin rolled his eyes. She can't get through 3 sentences without saying, "Lalisa said," he thought. "What's that over there?" he asked, pointing to a fan-shaped mound in the corner, topped with a canopy, filled with dark earth and ringed in bluestone with an opening at the side. "Oh, that's Grant and Lalisa's burrow," Nagini said. "The walls are coated with a hardening agent to keep it warm and dry, and Lalisa wove a feather bed from owl feathers." "You came early. You haven't had breakfast?" Grant asked. "Green vegetable and egg soup with fried chicken cutlets and sandwiches. Sound good?" "That sounds perfect. I'll put my things away and be right down." Robin went upstairs, set the fish tank on his desk, pulled the black cloth off, and tapped the glass. "Nini, you've moved to a new home," he said. "Fang and Scabbers won't be able to fly in here, even if they grow wings." Since the tank had been moved from the game reserve cabin to the boys' dormitory, Robin had been careful with Nini, feeding on time and sometimes playing chase the finger. 3 days earlier, however, Scabbers had scampered across the desk and bared his teeth at the fish through the thick glass. Nini had been frightened and hid among the anemone, refusing to come out. Robin tapped the tank again. An orange head finally poked out. The clownfish's eyes darted around, checked that the rat was no longer there, and then swam slowly toward his finger with its mouth open, begging. "You haven't eaten in days, have you?" Robin said. He tore open a paper packet and dropped 6 flakes into the water. After Nini gulped them down, the fish started an excited leaping dance, splashing seawater across the desk. "Nini, you're not a carp. There's no dragon gate for you to leap over," Robin laughed. Someone knocked at the door, and Nagini came in calling them down for breakfast. Her eyes fell on the leaping clownfish. This fish is a bit strange, she observed quietly. Nini likes to chase fingers, Robin explained, wiping water off his desk. Maybe it saw the wavy lines I drew and thinks the water's moving. 132. My claws are almost full of sparks. It's not its behavior that's strange, Robin said, frowning. It's the aura. I just caught a terrifying wisp of aura from it, but when I tried to pinpoint it, it vanished. Maybe I stayed up too late reading last night and I'm hallucinating, Nagini joked. Hallucinating? Robin didn't buy it. Animals' instincts are usually keener than humans. He'd been feeding the clownfish for over a month and had never once seen it cast magic. The bubbles it blew were always just ordinary transparent ones. He tapped the water. The clownfish swam over and sucked on his finger. Its gills opened and closed in vigorous motion, but its backward curving, tightly packed teeth didn't bite down. Robin pulled his finger free, fetched a magnifying glass, and peered at the water. Orange-red oval body, a black-edged white band behind its dark eye, two more bands, one along the dorsal fin and another at the tail junction, and black edges on the dorsal, pectoral, and tail fins. By looks and habit, it was just a common clownfish. Nini, leisurely circling, seemed curious about the round, thick lens. It drifted forward and pressed its dark, round eye to the glass like a child at a window. In the instant the eyeball filled the magnifying surface, Robin felt the world tip. A bottomless abyss surged at him, and in that abyss, something monstrous and dangerous slithered. Then the glass was pulled away, and everything snapped back to ordinary. Robin straightened, palms flattening on the table, breath coming fast, sweat prickled at his temples. "Are you all right?" Nagini asked, concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm hungry. Let's go downstairs and get some breakfast. After we eat, I'll give Norbert and the others their lesson." He forced a smile. He wasn't about to admit he'd been shaken by a fish's eye. Nagini wiped his face with a handkerchief and led him downstairs. After breakfast and a short break, they went back up to the second floor. Letting Norbert, Ya, Xiao Bai Long, Australian Opaleye, and Little Gray play for a while, Robin picked up a book titled Good Hygiene, I Can Do It, and began his lecture. Leaving scent marks in the wild is for territory and communicating with your kind. Here there's no territory to claim and no communication barrier. Leaving scent marks everywhere is bad for the environment. So, Norbert, Robin uncapped a pen and flicked the cap across the room. Biu dong, the cap hit Little Black Dragon square on the head. He had been gnawing the leg of the white fox's chair. "Norbert, were you listening?" Robin asked. Norbert spat out wood shavings and howled, indignant. "That's not fair. Ya does it too. Why do you only pick on me?" Robin glanced at Ya's hind leg. Canid's mark by lifting a leg to pee. Ya flicked her tail, covering the base of her hind leg and shielding Robin's view. "Stinky black dragon, stop spreading rumors about me," she shot back. Norbert puffed up with pride. "I'm not spreading rumors. My nose is very sensitive. I can smell a special scent on your face, on your butt, on your tail. Anywhere you rub your head or sweep your tail, that scent gets left behind. Just now you were in Master's arms, rubbing your face, licking his chin, sweeping his wrist. That's all marking." "But Master, ya does it too. Why don't you say anything to her?" Norbert demanded. Robin fell silent and inwardly reflected. At that moment, Xiao Bai Long fluttered into his arms, rubbing its head against his neck and cooing in a soft, syrupy voice. "Brother, they're so fierce. Xiao Bai Long is scared. Sister Norbert's messy and smelly. She yells at brother. Xiao Bai Long is clean. I smell nice, and I never lose my temper with brother." Robin sighed inwardly. Another manipulative little dragon to train. "Speak properly," he said and put Xiao Bai Long down. "Scared of what?" Norbert exploded. She lunged, knocked Xiao Bai Long flat, and started raking at her face with sharp black claws. Xiao Bai Long whimpered then, seeing no intervention from Master, flipped over, pinned Norbert, and returned the blows. The white fox's eyes darted, and it joined the fray. What began as a fight over spreading rumors spiraled into full chaos when more scratches and insults were exchanged. Little Gray, who'd been sitting calmly on a stool, couldn't stand it and crashed into the fight like a cannonball. A gray mist coalesced at the center of the scuffle. From the brows of Norbert, Ya, and Xiao Bai Long rose wisps of white soul energy. The vortex spun the soul energy toward Little Gray. When the first wisp came within a centimeter of Little Gray, Robin reacted, casting a small wind with a spark of lightning. The gust blew the gray mist apart. Freed from that binding, the soul energies snapped back to their owner's brows. Norbert, Ya, and Xiao Bailong blinked and came to. For a moment they reconciled, gathered around Little Gray, claws practically sparking. Robin closed his book, circled the battlefield, and left the study, closing the door behind him to let them sort it out. In the afternoon, convinced the battle had ended, he returned to the second floor and pushed open the study door. Norbert and Xiao Bailong were curled together on the windowsill in a yin-yang sprawl, asleep. Ye lay on the desk in an X, tongue lolling. Little Gray, paler than he'd been in the morning, was stealthily approaching the windowsill, whispering in a hoarse, faint voice, "Suck! Suck you dry! Suck you dry!" Robin quietly cast a sealing spell and trapped Little Gray in the Rubik's Cube device. Then, he carried the sleeping Norbert downstairs and sat her on his lap. Taking a feather left over from Lilisa's weaving, he gently tickled the dragon's white nostrils. A coo. Norbert sneezed, spraying a few bright yellow sparks. She opened misty eyes, saw it was her master, snorted, buried her head in his lap, and continued to huff sparks, still in a huff. Robin eased Norbert's head back and folded a simple condensing spell with his hands. "Norbert, do you want the red fire, the yellow, or the blue at the end?" he asked. Her eyes lit up despite herself. She pretended to be composed and only grunted. Robin waved his wrist, and the three flames merged, crackled, and stabilized into a surging black flame. A thin string of drool hit the floor. Norbert could no longer restrain herself. With a howl, she swallowed the black flame, sparks flying, and bleated happily. "Delicious, more please," she demanded, arrogant as ever. Robin fed her 20 black flames and 3 magic stones before the little black dragon was finally fully coaxed and satisfied. 133. Kicked the little black dragon up to the roof. Norbert was sprawled on Robin's shoulder, busy with a game that looked a lot like burping at imaginary stars. "Norbert, I'm sorry," Robin said. "I shouldn't have tried to squash your nature. From now on, in the Magic Cube Forest, you can do whatever you want, mess up all the trees, and I won't complain." Norbert lifted his head. "But this isn't the forest, and you're not the only resident here. How about a compromise? Let's pick a few fixed spots where I can leave my scent so nobody accidentally gets your poop smell on them. How about 5 spots? Sound fair?" "All right," Norbert said, "but I get to pick the 5 spots." "Deal." Robin stepped back a little, relieved. "Pinky promise?" Norbert squared his tiny dragon claw and held up his claw. "Okay." Their pinkies interlocked, thumbs touching, sealing the agreement. Norbert's eyes flickered with mischief. He hopped down, turned, and swayed his tail so it brushed Robin's calf. Robin stared as the pleats of skin expanded and contracted under the tail. He really wanted to kick the little dragon up to the ceiling. Norbert looked over his shoulder with a wicked grin. "Master, remember, we pinky promised. I get to choose where the fixed spots are. Heh." Then he began to back away slowly. "Go on, back off. If you want me to stop eating magic fire, magic stones, and canned meat forever, then keep backing away." He spun around and put on an ingratiating, purring face. "Master, I was only joking. Why take me so seriously? Are you going to the basement again? Can I come?" "No. Tell me, what 5 spots did you choose?" The golden chain tree in the yard, and in the study on the second floor. The money tree, the penholder, the curtains, and the ruffled bird doll. That's 5. The golden chain tree had been left by the house's previous owner. In spring, its canopy burst into golden, wing-shaped flowers that hung like strings of beads. The money tree could be fertilized later. He'd buy a new penholder when he had time. The curtains could be washed regularly, and the ruffled bird doll, well, after the herring can smell incident, Da Ben Hu, big clumsy fox, had kept his distance from it. "All right, Norbert, if I catch you marking anywhere else, I'll cut off your snacks." "I won't, I promise." Norbert thumped over to the golden chain tree, his tail rattling a shower of leaves, and resumed his enthusiastic behavior. Robin sighed, turned, and headed for the basement. In the sea of his consciousness, he silently summoned the gray box holding the green waste beads. In previous tests, strong light, magic flame, boiling water, sawing, even concentrated sulfuric acid, the beads had shown no reaction. This time, he planned new approaches. First method, split it with an axe. Robin fixed one bead on a stone platform, raised the axe with both hands, and brought it down hard. The stone platform split into 3 chunks. The axe blade bent and nicked, but the bead didn't budge. He hacked again. The platform shattered into rubble. The axe picked up a wavy edge, and the bead remained intact. Second method, scrape it with a diamond blade. He clamped a bead into an iron-grooved block and worked the diamond knife across its surface. His wrist ached and trembled, but the bead stayed unmarked. Third method, electrify it with lightning. He sealed a bead in a magic orb, drew his ebony staff, and pumped continuous purple lightning into the orb. After a long, crackling barrage, he stowed the staff, sat down, and dabbed at his eyes with eye drops. Fourth method, crush it under a hydraulic press. Deep in the basement, behind an old sofa, he found the 3-beam, 4-column press the previous owner had mentioned. The machine needed a steady infusion of magic. He placed a bead on the base, braced his staff against the pump, and engaged gear 1. The pump hummed. Blue smoke seeped from a valve and threaded through pipes to the main body. The cylinder descended slowly, then stopped when it met the bead. He clicked gear 2. The cylinder sank another 2 centimeters, then stalled. After so many failed experiments, Robin felt a flicker of hope. He held his breath and hit gear 3. Thud, the cylinder slammed into the base. Bang, the box on the workbench toppled. Whoosh, the bead fell free. Robin backed his staff away as the blue mist bled back into the pump, and the cylinder rose. The bead was now smashed into the base of the press, apparently embedded rather than destroyed. He pried it out and found it still unbroken. He muttered, "Who started this?" At the workbench, the gray box had been overturned. Beads littered the floor. 3 young creatures stood frozen a meter away. Debenhu's cheeks were puffed, and his tail bristled. Little Black Dragon had his long mouth stuffed full of green waste beads. One rolled out and plopped onto the floor. Xiao Bai Long, Little White Dragon, had damp eyes and a wronged expression, as if he'd been coerced into stealing. Robin walked closer and saw a burn hole chewed through the bottom of the wooden door. He sneered. "Impressive. You learned to crawl through dog holes." "Run!" Norbert shouted, and beads clattered as he bolted. He and Xiao Bai Long darted through the hole and raced up the stairs with Robin on their heels. On the second floor, in the study, the rules of the giant magic cube meant the magic creatures already inside its squares couldn't harm its owner. So the scene in the study was always one-sided, Robin doing the abusing. He grabbed Da Ben-Hu, ruffled his fur into a bedraggled mess, opened his mouth, and gently plucked the green waste beads out one by one. He yanked Norbert by the tail, hung him upside down, and tickled all his ticklish spots until the dragon laughed and coughed up more beads. He pinched Xiao Bai Long's wing roots, ran his hands along the wings, and eventually fished 2 beads out of his ear canal. "Wait here. I'll be back to deal with you later," Robin warned. Back in the basement, he gathered the beads that had fallen and put the recovered ones and the experimental bead back into the box. Then he noticed a groove in the foam padding was empty. He upended the gray box, turned the basement upside down, and after confirming the bead wasn't there, trudged back up the stairs, searching along the way. 134. Poor Nicholas. "All right, who came up with this brilliant idea?" Robin demanded, sitting at his desk and glaring at the 3 younglings lined up before him. "It was Xiao Bai," the white fox squealed, pointing an accusatory paw at his teammate. "He said the basement was clanging and banging and asked if I wanted to see what you were doing. I said I was curious, so he suggested we go down. Xiao Bai told me there hadn't been any clanging from the basement for half an hour, and even guessed something might have happened to you," Little Black Dragon protested, lifting his chin proudly. "I only followed him down because I was worried." "Woo, since my sisters both said so, big brother, let's say it was my idea to go downstairs," Xiao Bai Long sniffed, looking put upon. "Master, Sister Ya didn't bite my tail and drag me down. I went down on my own. Sister Norbert didn't choke me either, and the hole in the wooden door, I burned that myself." Robin watched them, thinking all 3 equally suspicious. Ben-Hu looked like an adult fox in his true form, but by a 9-tailed demon fox's standards, he was still a weanling. Curiosity and a fondness for pranks made him just as likely a culprit as Little Black Dragon, who'd suggested going to the basement in the first place. Xiao Bai Long was suspicious because Ya and Norbert both blamed him, and because he seemed to have more mischief in his repertoire than the others. Fine. Main culprit Xiaobai, 2 months' worth of snacks deducted. Accomplices Ya and Norbert, 1 month's worth each. Robin opened the gray box, pointed to the empty slot, and continued. There were 100 before. Now there are only 99. Tell me, where is that one? All three shook their heads in unison, yet even offered to be searched if Robin didn't believe them. Robin rolled up his sleeves and frisked each of them again, then searched the study from top to bottom, but there was no sign of the missing green waist bead. Outside, the sky had darkened to ink black, reminding everyone it was time to return to school. Robin silently mumbled a spell, placed the three who pretended to help but were really doing parkour into a magic cube, and told Nagini to feed Nini on time and to keep an extra eye on the green beads. He slipped on his black cloak and took the secret passage through the shrieking shack. When he emerged from under the Whomping Willow, the heavy rain had eased to a steady, thread-like shower. By morning, it had become a light drizzle. Wood, the unofficial king of intensive training, called everyone out to the field early. He didn't relent until the sun set, and the drizzle grew heavier. Robin and Harry packed up and made their way back to the castle entrance. They cast a quick cleaning charm on each other before stepping through the door, greeted Professor McGonagall in the foyer, and turned down the corridor. Rounding a corner, Robin froze. A nearly transparent ghost stood with his back to them, staring out a window as if weighed down by sorrow. His hair was unkempt. He wore a tunic that reached his knees, and a ruff as wide as a cartwheel encircled a third of his neck. With a soft sigh, he lifted his head and twisted it, almost off. The head hung connected to the neck by only a scrap of skin and sinew. Nearly Headless Nick, so named because an unreliable executioner had struck him 45 times and left him with his head barely attached, looked, in truth, rather pitiful. Nick hailed from the noble de Mimsy Porpington family. After graduating from Gryffindor, he'd tried his luck in the Muggle world. His wizarding status had opened doors, and he even found his way into the royal court as a courtier to King Henry VII, earning a knighthood. On the evening of October 30th, 1492, while out for a walk in a park, he had met Lady Grieve, who was inconsolable over her crooked teeth. Confident, Nick promised to fix them with magic. After much deliberation, Lady Grieve agreed, but instead of straight teeth, she ended up with long, sharp fangs. For that fiasco, Nick had his wand taken and was sentenced to death. That night, the dungeon echoed with his cries. "Let me out! Give me back my wand! I can cure Lady Grieve! Let me out quickly!" But the guards pretended not to hear. The next morning, escorted to the execution ground by a priest, he met an executioner who couldn't find a sharpening stone. The dull axe was raised again and again. Despite 45 blows, Nick's head remained attached by a small shred of skin and sinew. Afraid of true death and unwilling to accept it, he returned to Hogwarts as a ghost and became the resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower. "Hello, Nick," Harry called as they approached the window. "Hello, hello, everyone," Nick replied, awkwardly righting his head before turning to greet them. "You seem troubled," Robin said. Nick frowned. His face was mournful, but his tone was nonchalant. "It's a small thing, really. I applied to join the Headless Hunt, but the reply came back saying I don't meet the selection criteria." "Which criterion?" Harry asked. At that, Nick lost his composure. He twisted his head to emphasize the little strip of skin and sinew still holding him together and cried, "You two be the judges. Do I, with a neck like this, qualify to join the Headless Hunt?" Yes," Harry said quickly, trying to be encouraging. Encouraged, Nick produced a neatly folded letter and unfolded it with a dramatic sniff. "More than anyone, I wish that executioner had been more efficient," he said indignantly. "There's only the tiniest bit of skin and sinew left. How is that different from being completely headless? But Patrick doesn't think so." Robin and Harry leaned in to read the dusty letter aloud. "Dear Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, we regret to inform you that the Headless Hunt only accepts ghosts whose heads are completely severed from their necks. Otherwise, the hunt would be unable to perform activities such as horseback head juggling and head polo. Therefore, it is with regret that we must inform you that you do not meet the recruitment criteria for the hunt. Sir Patrick Podmore." Nick crumpled the letter into a ball, stuffed it back into his pocket, and looked indignant. "Is there anything you can do to help with my application?" Harry asked kindly. "Oh, you can't? Well, wait. There is something you could do. This year, on October 31st, my 500th death day, I've booked a very spacious basement and plan to hold a death day party. I've sent invitations to all my friends. If nothing unexpected happens, Patrick will also come, and I want." 135. Salamander's Escape. "What do you want us to do?" Harry asked. "I'd like to invite you to my death day party," Robin said, grinning. "And would you put in a good word for me with Patrick? Just tell him the moment I tore my head off was really frightening, okay?" "But there's also a feast at school that night," Harry protested. "Harry, the Halloween Eve feast happens every year," Robin replied. "A ghost's death day party, though. Those are rare. Trust me, this is better." He turned back to Nick. "All right, Nick, can I bring a few more people, like Ron and Hermione?" "Of course. The more the merrier." "Next Saturday, 7:50 p.m., at the entrance to the third basement," Nick said, bowing in his usual slightly eerie way. Then he drifted through the wall and was gone. They had only gone a short distance when Peeves came flying toward them, carrying a rusty, leaky aluminum bucket that swung and clanged as he went. Foam clung to the rim. Dirty gray water dripped from the bottom in a thin, steady trickle. The little perforated iron piece that attached the handle to the bucket creaked as it swung. Robin hauled Harry against the wall. Peeves passed about 2 meters away, still singing nonsense, when the bucket finally slipped from the handle and crashed to the floor, showering the corridor with foamy gray water. Peeves scooped it up again, peered at the spreading puddle, and a mischievous light danced in his eyes. "Oh dear, a slip-up," he sang. "But little brats, the bald old stinkman isn't in a very good mood lately. I hear someone smeared the juice of hundreds of mashed caterpillars on the outer wall of his office," Peeves quipped. "Had him scrubbing all day. I can hear a cat mewling," he added. "Good luck, little brats." He hugged the bucket and vanished. A scrawny gray cat burst from behind a tapestry and, seeing the dirty water, let out a piercing yowl. "What do we do?" Harry whispered. Mrs. Norris was Filch's constant lookout. If she found students breaking the rules, she'd screech and go straight to her master. "Get rid of the dirty water," Robin said. He tossed a few dried fish along the floor. The cat immediately stopped yowling and began crunching on them, purring hungrily. Robin drew his wand and started a cleaning spell, but before he could finish, Filch exploded from behind the tapestry. Filch looked worse than usual, his back more hunched, a thick knitted purple scarf wrapped around his head, and his nose red and swollen as if stung. He saw the puddle, and his double chin trembled with fury. His beady eyes locked on Harry and Robin. "Filth! Filth everywhere!" he barked. "Disgusting caterpillar juice, hissing carnivorous slugs, crushed beetle droppings, yellow frog brains. I've had enough. I'm going to make an example of someone." "Lestrange, Potter, come with me," he ordered. Robin shot a look at Harry, part sympathy, part annoyance. Why did Filch never use his head? "Peeves splashed this," Robin said. "If you want to make an example, catch him downstairs." "Do you think I'll believe your nonsense?" Filch snapped. "Everything needs evidence, Mr. Filch. What do you have to prove this puddle was splashed by Harry and me? Only you two are in the corridor. That's the evidence." "What kind of evidence is that?" Harry retorted loudly. Filch's breath came in harsh wheezes. A droplet of snot hung from his nose. He pinched at his scarf and blew loudly, then fixed them with a dark, malicious stare. Robin narrowed his eyes. "Look behind you," he said calmly. "Besides that puddle, there's a trail of drops, same color, leading down the corridor." "The drops came from the other end," Harry added. "If you go to the end of the corridor, you'll see them on the stairs too. The water is leaking from upstairs to downstairs. Harry and I were just finishing training and were planning to go up to the tower to rest. How could we have spilled this? If you don't believe us, ask Professor McGonagall. We just saw her in the Great Hall." Filch turned, and for once, his words failed him as he looked at the line of gray drops leading away. Robin flicked his wand and completed the cleaning spell. The puddle vanished from the floor. Filch's glare followed him as he bent to lift Mrs. Norris. As he did, an envelope bulged from his loose robes and slipped out, clattering to the floor. The purple envelope read, "Quick spellcasting. Introduction to Magic Correspondence Course. Filch's face went an embarrassed red that matched his nose. He snatched the envelope back and jammed it deep into his collar. He squinted at Harry, who had been staring at the floor, and stammered, Did you see? That's not my letter. It's for a friend." "I didn't see what was written on it," Harry said, though Filch clearly didn't believe him. The caretaker's knot of fingers tightened. "Don't breathe a word of this," Filch hissed. "Fine, I'll let you two off this time. Go on, move along. I need to fetch tools to clean the water upstairs." Harry whooped quietly and urged Robin away. They hurried up to the 8th floor and into the common room, where Hermione and Ron were waiting. They told them everything that had just happened. "A ghost's death day party?" Hermione said, closing Lockhart's Travels with Trolls and looking intrigued. "How curious. I don't see anything to celebrate about the day of your death. What do you put in the chapped skin potion?" Ron interrupted, still working on Potion's homework. "How many dried winterflame leaves do I add?" "4 leaves," Hermione answered, without looking up. No sooner had she spoken than there was a bang as a black-bottomed, yellow-spotted salamander shot into the air, twisting like a spinning dart and spraying crackling orange sparks. A chorus of gasps filled the common room. George had lit one of the Weasleys' wildfire whiz-bangs and was cheering. "Good job! Fly higher!" Percy's voice, sharp and reedy, cut through the cheering as he scolded Fred and Lee Jordan, who only scratched their ears and shouted encouragements at the creature. A few minutes later, the salamander, crackling and sizzling, leapt into the roaring fireplace. George reached for it with fire tongs, but Percy stopped him just in time. Robin breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Salamanders are magical creatures born of fire and feeding on it. If they couldn't survive outside the flames for a little while by eating chili peppers, they would have been handled far more roughly by those 3 long before today. Time flew. Before he knew it, it was 7:30 p.m. on October 31st, and the group headed downstairs. As they passed the entrance to the great hall on the 1st floor, Robin Lestrange peered in. Thousands of black bats swirled through the rafters. Marshmallow-like dark clouds hovered over the 4 long dining tables. Fred and George were fanning a cloud over Ginny's head with thin books. Percy, wearing his prefect badge, patrolled among the students trying to keep order. Giant pumpkin lanterns as big as carriages sat on the floor, and a troop of skeletons danced a macabre jig around one enormous pumpkin. Colin was taking pictures of them with his camera. They left the main hall and descended into a corridor lit by black candles with blue flames. With every step, the air grew colder. As they turned a corner, a sound like nails on a blackboard cut across the corridor, sharp and grating. Robin blinked. Had ghosts developed terrible taste in music? Ron muttered, "Ugh, that's awful." They turned right and found nearly headless Nick standing sadly by a doorway. When he saw the group, his face brightened in an instant. "Welcome. I'm so pleased you could make it. Do come in." Inside, Robin discovered the source of the horrible sound. 30 musical saws were wailing away. Hundreds of translucent, gray-white ghosts drifted and danced to the piercing music. Black candles, like the ones in the corridor, burned on the chandelier, on the bandstand, and around the stage. "Let's have a look around," Robin suggested. "Okay, but be careful not to walk through anyone," Harry said, stamping his feet against the cold. They edged inward, following the black cloth that marked the stage. Robin scanned the ghosts on the platform as they passed. A man in tattered clothes, with chains wrapped around hands and feet, was headbanging with his back bowed. A tall knight with an arrow lodged across his forehead was doing an odd sort of tap dance with his hands on his hips. A group of sorrowful nuns sang hymns with their hands clasped to their chests. "That one's strange," Ron suddenly whispered. Robin followed his gaze and saw a girl sitting on a small stool, letting ghosts drift right through her. She had long, golden blonde curls that fell to her waist, very pale eyebrows, and silvery eyes that seemed to bulge slightly, giving her a permanently surprised look. A wand was tucked behind her left ear, and she was reading a copy of The Quibbler, upside down. Long, waist-length curls, bulging silvery eyes, a wand tucked behind her ear. It had to be Luna Lovegood. Robin remembered that in the original books, Luna didn't appear until later. But here she was, in the same year as Ginny. She's reading it upside down, isn't that odd? Ron whispered. Maybe she likes it that way, Hermione said in a muffled voice. Or maybe some of the articles are printed the other way round. At that, the girl looked up. Her gaze swept over Ron, then fixed on Robin. Are you Robin Lestrange? She asked. Yes. He was taken aback. Are you a new Ravenclaw student? Exceptional intelligence is humanity's greatest treasure, she said in a soft sing-song. Did nearly headless Nick give you special instructions? Did you get instructions? Harry asked. No. I was just passing by and came in to look. It's rather wonderful here, isn't it? Passing by? Robin thought. Passing by here at this hour, right? Yes, just happened to be passing by. Luna lifted the upside-down quibbler to hide her face and went silent. The others moved on, and when Robin glanced back a few meters later, she was still staring at them. She made no show of being caught. She simply kept the magazine up, as if nothing were unusual. Robin smiled inwardly. She really did live up to the reputation of being eccentric. When they'd gone about 3/4 of the way around the stage, Hermione suddenly halted and hissed. Oh no, Moaning Myrtle is floating this way. Quick, turn your backs to her. I don't want to talk to her. Hermione pulled Robin toward the stone wall, and they turned to face it. They heard a thin, whiny sob pass by, and then the crying faded. Hermione exhaled. Myrtle's the resident ghost of a girls' lavatory on the 3rd floor. She's very temperamental, zipping around the taps, splashing water, shrieking at the slightest thing. She's absolutely dreadful. A soft ripping sound, the candy wrapper being torn. Open your mouth, Robin said. Hermione obliged, and Robin popped a lime-flavored hard candy into her mouth. The tacky feel of the wrapper and candy on his fingertip made him wish for one himself. Hermione swallowed and patted her chest. Phew, much better. Robin Lestrange, where are our candies? Ron complained. Here. Robin produced a couple more. Ron and Harry had to unwrap their own. The 4 of them walked on, sucking their sweets. At the end of the corridor, a long table covered in black cloth ran along the wall. Silver platters displayed delicacies for ghosts. Chunks of meat, scorched bread, tripe crawling with maggots, cheese crusted in blue-green mold, and a cake shaped like a tombstone. Written on the cake in caramel were the words, Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, died October 31st, 1492. That's disgusting. Who would eat that? Ron gagged. It's for ghosts, Robin said. The meat smelled rotten, the bread was burnt black, the tripe wriggled. A ghost with gruesome wounds drifted over, arched into an S shape and slid along the table from one end to the other, smacking ethereal lips. Can you taste it? Robin asked. Sort of, the ghost replied, with a delicate sniff. It's no great shakes. It floated off toward the wine-tasting area, where bottles were crusted with a 2 to 3 centimeters layer of pasty mold. Let's go. If we stay here, I'm going to be sick, Ron muttered, holding his nose. Don't go, you little brats, a high, mischievous voice sang out. Peeves burst from under the table, his crooked bow tie askew, and a plate of moldy peas balanced in one hand. Care for a taste of these? He asked in an overly sweet voice. No, thank you, Robin said, backing away. Peeves put the plate down with a theatrical sigh, glinting mischief in his eyes. He leaned toward Hermione and purred. I just heard you talking about Myrtle over there. Tsk, how rude. It wasn't rude, it was true, Hermione retorted. Oh, is that so? Peeves took a great breath and shouted at the top of his lungs. Hey, Myrtle, over here, come here. Some little brats are talking about you. 137. Jellyfish fireworks and skunk trumpet. Peeves, stop shouting. A gloomy, melancholy ghost with round spectacles floated up in front of them, frowning. What? He demanded. Hermione gripped Robin's hand and forced a calm smile. Hello, Myrtle. I'm glad to see you here. Hey, Myrtle, that brat was just talking about you. Peeves snickered from behind. Moaning Myrtle, making a ridiculous face. I said you look very cultured and beautiful in your pearly glasses, Hermione added, scowling at Peeves. Myrtle's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Suddenly tears like tiny beads began to spill down her cheeks. You're making fun of me for wearing glasses. No, I really wasn't, Hermione protested. Don't lie. Myrtle's small eyes kept leaking. Don't think I don't know what you call me behind my back. Weeping Myrtle, ugly Myrtle, gloomy Myrtle, even fat Myrtle. Heh, you missed one. Pimple-faced Myrtle, Peeves crowed, striking the sorest nerve. You're all making fun of me. Boo-hoo. Myrtle covered her face and floated away, wailing. Peeves snatched a silver tray and set off after her, pelting her with moldy peas and shouting, "Myrtle, acne, pimple-faced, disgusting, truly disgusting." "I was afraid she'd do that," Hermione said helplessly. Nearly headless Nick floated over from the crowd of ghosts and asked, "Are you enjoying the party?" "It's fine," Robin said. Nick brightened. "That's good. The turnout today exceeded my expectations. I didn't think the Wailing Widow, the Forest Savage, the Giant-Handed Brute, and the Hungry Widower would come all the way to Hogwarts. All right, speech time is almost here. I should get back to the stage and remind the band to change the tune." Nick turned to leave, and then the ear-splitting, chalk-scraping music cut off. Conversations died. Every ghost stood up and craned toward the stone wall. From the right-hand wall, a hunting horn blast echoed. Toot! Nick clutched at his hair. He looked like a man who suddenly remembered he'd forgotten something terribly important. A chorus of neighs answered the horn. 12 powerful ghost horses burst through the wall and galloped into the basement. Each carried a headless rider. The assembled ghosts erupted in cheers. Harry and Ron were about to join in when Robin gave them a quick look and stopped them. No host likes to be upstaged. The ghost horses reared in the center of the room, snorting and neighing before settling. The lead rider dismounted. A large ghost spun his bearded head around several times, drawing peals of laughter, then casually popped it back on and sauntered toward Nick. "Nick, long time no see. Is your head still on your neck?" he roared with a boisterous laugh. "Patrick, I'm really glad you came," Nick said with a stiff smile. "Living people?" he added in mock horror. Patrick caught sight of Robin and his friends and leaped an ostentatious 3 feet in the air. His bearded head fell off, rolled across the floor like a marble, and the ghosts howled. "Your old tricks are still so good," Nick said, deadpan. After one lap around the hall, the head righted itself and clicked back into place. Patrick gave a snarky look and rejoined his hunting crew. Nick floated back to the podium, took up his place under the cool spotlight, and shouted to the assembled spirits, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll turn your attention." But the audience's eyes were glued to Patrick's head hockey antics. Wherever the bearded head flew, cheers erupted. Nick tried and tried to raise a voice above the din, but the crowd wouldn't look. His hands began to tremble with disappointment. Upstaging someone at his 500th death day party. Too much of a joke. Robin pulled a bucket-sized 9-shot firework tube from his Sea of Consciousness space, set it on the podium, drew his wand, and lit the fuse. The first spark hissed, then the gunpowder flared. With a loud crack, 9 streams shot out and exploded into hundreds of crystal blue, glowing jellyfish. They hovered and drifted around the podium, their fringe-like tentacles swaying, bell-shaped bodies pulsating as if in slow water. Nick reached out in surprise as one jellyfish, silk and ribbon-like, slid through his arm. For an instant, the basement dissolved, and he found himself inside a vast, ethereal blue sea, utterly entranced. The ghosts, too, forgot their rivalries. Every face mirrored Nick's wonder. Robin snapped his fingers to bring Nick back, then placed a cattail-patterned megaphone on the lectern and pressed the start button. He leaned close and murmured, "Nick, carry on." Back at the stage edge, Robin noticed Lavender Brown staring fixedly at a pale blue jellyfish. "Lavender," he called until she blinked and returned to the moment. "Do you have any in lavender?" she asked, eyes still shining. "Lavender is still in development," Hermione said excitedly. "But I've already arranged with the shopkeeper. When they're available, he's to reserve 10 boxes for me, whatever the price." "Look, the megaphone's vibrating," Ron cried. Just as Nick opened his mouth to say "I," the megaphone shuddered violently. Then, to everyone's astonishment, a small skunk floated out of it. A narrow white stripe streaked between its eyes. Between its upraised paws, it held a little cattail-shaped letter I. The skunk opened its mouth and shouted "I" in Nick's exact voice, but 5 octaves higher. The shrill, insistent cry cut through the noise like a bell. Now no one could ignore the speaker. Even Patrick's face had gone pale with annoyance. 5 minutes later, Nick concluded his speech to enthusiastic applause, beaming as he bowed again and again. "This has been the happiest death day I've had since my own death," he kept saying, overwhelmed. When Robin went up to retrieve the megaphone, Nick kept bowing. The band returned to its musical saw, and one by one, the ghosts floated onto the stage, waltzing among the glowing jellyfish as the unusual underwater-lit ballroom spun gently on. 138. The door to the secret room has been opened. After saying goodbye to Nick, Robin and the others walked back into the corridor lit by black candles. They moved along the cold stone wall when Harry suddenly stumbled and stopped. He planted a hand on the wall, turned his head, and listened as if trying to locate a sound. "Harry, what's wrong?" Ron asked. "Did you hear something?" "Hear what?" Hermione replied. "That sound. The same one I heard in Lockhart's office. It's back." Robin silently activated Nagini's whispering skill, and an icy whisper slid into his mind. "Blood. I smell it. I smell blood. Tear. Tear you. Kill you. I want to kill all of you." "Kill all of you," Robin thought. "How capable are you really? Besides Myrtle, who else have you killed?" The whisper seemed to seep through the stones. "Strange," Robin murmured. "The stone ceiling isn't blocking it. It's moving upward. Could it be a ghost?" Before he could finish, another voice, softer and higher, seemed to come from above. "The time has come." "Oh no, it's going to hurt someone," Ron blurted, then dashed toward the exit. "What is Harry trying to do?" Ron asked, confused. "Who knows?" Hermione frowned. "Don't ask, just follow him." The three of them hurried after Harry. They climbed the stairs into the entrance hall, then hurried on until they found him in the Great Hall. Harry was looking up at the ceiling, frowning. "It's too noisy on the first floor," he said. "I can't tell where it's moving. Let's go to the second floor." They climbed the marble staircase. Harry pressed his ear to the wall and listened for a moment, then said the sound was on the floor above. They pressed on to the third floor, racing down most of its corridor until they rounded a corner and came to a waterlogged passage. "Look, how strange. I've never seen spiders move like that," Hermione said, pointing. They waded through the shallow pooling water to the window and looked up. Between the highest pane and the frame was a narrow gap. A strand of silken webbing hung down to the sill, and dozens of spiders were frantically pouring out along it. Ron let out a groan. "I hate spiders." Ron lurched back in alarm and bumped into Robin, who was staring down at the puddle at his feet. "What are you looking at?" Ron asked. "The reflection in the water," Robin said. Ron squinted at the puddle. The water reflected the dusty stone, and across it, red words on the gray wall, words they hadn't noticed at eye level. "Look, quick, there are words on the wall," Ron cried. Robin looked up. Harry and Hermione turned as well. By the torchlight, the four of them read the smeared red letters clearly. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." "It's written in blood," Hermione whispered, panic tightening her voice as she clutched Robin's arm. Look at that extinguished torch. There's a dark shape on it." They picked their way through the standing water toward the torch and saw what the shadow was. Madame Norris, hanging upside down from the bracket. Her body was rigid as clay, her tail hooked over the iron. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, frozen in a look of terror. "Shouldn't we try to help her?" Harry stammered. "How can we save her?" Hermione fretted. "Harry, let's go. I don't want to be caught here," Ron urged. "It's too late," Robin said, and at that moment, the sound of hundreds of footsteps and voices swelled from both ends of the corridor. Students who had been at the feast came pouring into the passage, laughing and talking until they saw the scene. Instantly, the chatter died, replaced by stunned silence, faces drawn with shock, panic, or fear. Draco Malfoy pushed to the front, his sneer fixed on the red writing. "Enemies of the air, beware," he mocked, loud enough for several to hear. "Next to be killed will be you, mudbloods." "What's happening? Move aside! Clear the way!" someone cried as Filch pushed through the crowd with a hunched rush. He froze when he saw Madame Norris, then lurched back as if struck. My cat! Who did this?" Filch's bulging eyes landed on the four students near the torch. He charged forward, wailing, You killed my cat! I want to kill you! He reached for Harry's collar. A single commanding voice stopped him. The crowd parted as Albus Dumbledore arrived, followed by a line of teachers. He paused and read the blood on the wall, then raised his voice. "Everyone, maintain order. Follow your prefects back to your house dormitories and go to bed." As the students began to disperse up the stairs, Dumbledore called to the four of them. "You four, stay." When the crowd had thinned, Dumbledore carefully unhooked Madame Norris from the torch. His deep blue eyes, magnified behind his half-moon spectacles, inspected the cat's face, tail, and fur. He poked her ears and even gave her back a gentle prod. "Argus, she's not dead," he said. "She's been petrified." At that, Lockhart flashed his dazzling smile. "I recall a similar petrification in the capital of Burkina Faso. I wrote of it in my autobiography, Magical Me. I drew the talismans that—" Dumbledore gave Lockhart a calm, disarming look and cut him off. "Argus, I'm not yet certain how Madame Norris was petrified." Filch, still trembling, pointed at Harry and howled, "Ask him. He did it. He hates my cat because the cat caught him breaking school rules." Filch's voice rose until it was a raw shriek. "Sir, you saw what was written on the wall. He found, that day it was raining in the corridor. He saw the letter. He knows I'm a squib. Aren't enemies of the air referring to me?" Harry felt the teacher's eyes on him and snapped back, loud and desperate. "Filch, that's not true. I swear I didn't touch your cat, and I didn't see anything written that day." "Liar," Filch rasped. "You saw it. You saw that quick spell correspondence course letter." Dumbledore silenced him with a small gesture and looked toward Severus Snape. A cold voice rose from the shadowy edge of the crowd, Severus, sallow and sharp, and Dumbledore invited him to speak. "Severus, perhaps you can say something." 139. Once you teach for 1,000 years. Perhaps they were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Still, there are suspicious points. For example, why were they absent from the Halloween feast? Snape pressed. "Professor, we missed the feast because we went down to the dungeons for Nearly Headless Nick's 500th Death Day party. Nick and his friends can all vouch for us," Robin explained. Snape leaned forward. "And after that, why did you not go to the feast? Why did you hurry off upstairs?" "We were tired and wanted to get back to the tower to rest earlier," Hermione answered. A hint of triumph flickered in Snape's eyes. "No dinner? I imagine the food at a ghost's death day party isn't exactly suitable for the living." "That's right," Robin drawled. Snape's satisfaction grew. "Right, moldy, rotten food crawling with maggots. Not something one would eat. Sometimes just looking at it is enough to put you off food for the night." "You," Robin began. Snape's mouth twitched. He turned to Dumbledore, who presided over the inquiry. "Severus, innocent until proven guilty." Dumbledore's voice was steady and bright as a torch. "Argus, we will restore Mrs. Norris. Someone must have petrified her, and whoever did this will be found. Professor Sprout has recently grown a new batch of mature mandrakes. Once they are ready, a potion can be brewed that will cure your cat." Filch began to wail, spittle flying. Dumbledore kept him calm. Lockhart straightened and volunteered grandly. "Leave the potion to me. I have brewed the mandrake restorative myself many times. I could do it with my eyes closed." "Excuse me, I believe I am Hogwarts potions master," Snape cut in, and Lockhart's smile froze. Dumbledore raised a hand. "Until the restorative is prepared, everyone should be careful." "All right, the 4 of you may go." "Yes, sir." Robin led the other 3 up the stairs. "It's very strange, isn't it?" he murmured. On the 5th floor, Ron suddenly spoke. "What's strange about it?" Harry asked. "Harry, first you heard that sound nobody else heard, then we followed it to the 3rd floor, and we found Mrs. Norris petrified. That's strange." Hermione frowned. "Should I tell Dumbledore and the other professors about the sound I heard?" "Harry, are you mad?" Ron exclaimed. "Don't say that aloud. Even in the wizarding world, strange noises are bad omens." "Robin, do you know what Quickspell is?" Hermione asked. "It's a correspondence course company. It offers several magic courses designed for people with no innate talent who still want to learn magic. So Filch could cast spells if he read a Quickspell book?" Ron laughed, hand over his mouth. "Filch is a squib. He hasn't a speck of magic in him. Even if he memorized a book until it fell apart, he couldn't cast a single spell." Dong dong. A distant bell tolled curfew. Hermione snapped. "We should hurry back to the dormitory before Filch or Snape come looking for trouble." Over the next days, students gathered in 2s and 3s, whispering about the Chamber of Secrets, the air, and the petrification of the gray cat. Argus Filch walked his usual beat on the 3rd floor corridor, convinced the culprit would return to the scene. He even bought a large barrel of universal stain remover and tried, day after day, to scrub the red writing from the stone wall, but the letters refused to fade. Filch began to mimic Mrs. Norris's habits, hiding behind tapestries and in empty classrooms, peering down corridors through keyholes with red, swollen eyes. He would leap out beside passing students on flimsy pretexts, a crooked tie, too loud talking, mud on a shoe, and confiscate their time with detention and composition on proper conduct. Ginny Weasley looked pale and distracted, worried about the petrified cat. Ron, Fred, and George tried to comfort her, but the more they did, the more anxious she became. If anyone suggested the professors will catch them and expel them, Ginny would go ashen and tremble. Her odd behavior made the question of Tom Riddle's diary hover ever nearer. Hermione fretted as well. She wanted to learn everything she could about the Chamber of Secrets, but she had overslept on Halloween and missed her chance to borrow Hogwarts, a history from Madame Pince. The waiting list for that book was a meter long, and Hermione sulked for more than 10 days over it. Then Robin offered a practical idea. If she couldn't get the book, ask someone who knows. Hermione brightened at once. But whom to ask? Dumbledore was too busy and his office hard to find. McGonagall was strict and likely to scold. Snape would be worse and might deduct house points. Then someone remembered Professor Cuthbert Binns, History of Magic teacher. He had been teaching at Hogwarts for as long as anyone could remember, long enough that he'd been around when the school was young. Binns was dry, precise, and, importantly, eminently unbothered by student authority or house points. He seemed the perfect source for historical legends. Mid-November, Wednesday afternoon, History of Magic. Professor Binns stood at the podium with his notebook, his voice a low, monotone hum that flowed like an old vacuum cleaner. Beneath him, students nodded and dozed, occasionally scratching down a date or a name before their heads sank back. When Binns mentioned the International Wizarding Conference of 1289, Hermione shot her hand up so suddenly it made heads turn. "You are?" Binns asked, mildly surprised. "Professor, I'm Hermione Granger. Could you tell us about the legend of the Chamber of Secrets?" The class suddenly sat up. Binns cleared his throat. "Miss Granger, this is History of Magic. I deal in facts, not myths and legends." He returned to his notes. In October 1289, a committee composed of... Professor Binns had barely begun when Robin Lestrange shot his hand up, waving it energetically. "You are?" "I am Robin Lestrange, Professor. Aren't legends and myths all built up from some kernel of fact?" Every eye in the classroom turned to the podium, keen interest brightening faces that moments before had been half asleep. Professor Binns heaved a long, ghostly sigh. "Very well. It's been some time. Let me see the Chamber of Secrets. Salazar." "Ah, yes, I remember now." As you all know, Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago by 4 of the greatest witches and wizards of the age. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. At first, the founders were in complete agreement. They traveled far and wide to find children with magical talent and brought them back to the castle to be carefully taught. Later, however, disagreements arose. Salazar wanted the school to be more selective. He believed magical education should be reserved for those from magical families, pure-blood wizards. Eventually, Gryffindor and Salazar quarreled bitterly over admissions. When Salazar realized he could not change the others' minds, he left the school. Ahem. Professor Binns cleared his throat and continued in that same monotone. Legend says that when the school was founded, Salazar, without the others' knowledge, built a secret chamber in the castle, the Chamber of Secrets. He sealed the chamber before he left, to be opened only by his true heir. Only that heir would be able to open the chamber and unleash whatever horror lay within, using it to purify the school and rid it of those Salazar deemed unworthy of magic, Muggle-born witches and wizards. When Binns finished, a hush fell over the room. The students stared at him, waiting for more. "Of course," the professor went on, flipping his notebook closed, "the Chamber of Secrets is merely a legend. The staff have searched the castle many times. No one has ever found it." "Professor, does the legend say what the horror actually is?" Hermione pressed. "It is said whatever lives in the chamber can only be controlled by Salazar's heir. Some say a terrible monster dwells within." A collective gasp rippled through the desks. Nervous glances were exchanged up and down the rows. Professor Binns awkwardly opened his notebook again and mumbled, "This is just a legend. The chamber and the monster do not exist. Now, solid, verifiable history. In October 1289, a Sardinian wizard. The old ghost droned on, and within minutes the students' attention drifted back to drowsy heads and half-closed eyes. After class, the small group gathered in an empty classroom. "Do you think the chamber could actually exist?" Ron asked. "Yes," Robin said. "Look how worried Dumbledore and the professors were when they saw the red writing and Mrs. Norris petrified. That suggests someone opened the chamber." "And Dumbledore couldn't reverse what happened to Filch's cat on the spot," Hermione added. "That makes me think it wasn't ordinary magic that petrified her." Harry pursed his lips. "If the chamber exists and it's been opened, then it means Salazar's heir has returned to Hogwarts. The question is, who?" Cho frowned. "Think about it. Who in the school hates Muggleborns the most?" Ron asked, putting on an exaggerated look of puzzlement. "Malfoy," Robin suggested. "Of course it's him," Ron said with a nod. "Didn't you hear what he said in the corridor on the 3rd floor? Next to be killed will be you mudbloods. And just look at him, his sneering, pointy-nosed face. He's the sort who'd be proud to be Salazar's heir." "I heard him too," Cho said. "But could Malfoy actually be the heir? Look at the Malfoy family, Slytherins for generations. Maybe the key to the chamber has been passed down in their line to Lucius's son, Draco. But how do we prove it?" "Go find Malfoy and trick him into confessing," Ron suggested simply. "Malfoy isn't that stupid," Robin said. "But there might be another way, dangerous, rule-breaking, and very difficult." "What method?" Robin asked. "Last Friday in potions, Professor Snape mentioned a potion that can make someone look like someone else," Hermione said. "We could drink it, become Malfoy's friends, sneak into the Slytherin common room or dormitory, and, with Malfoy's love of showing off, get him to reveal something." "Where would we get such a potion?" Harry asked. "We'll brew it," Hermione said. "Snape said the full recipe is in advanced potion making in the restricted section. To borrow that book, you'd normally need a signed slip from a professor." "There's another option," Robin offered. "We could use the invisibility cloak and sneak into the restricted section ourselves. Besides, I know a bit of duplication magic, enough to help get what we need." "Hermione, we don't have any good reason to ask Snape for his signature," Harry said. "And pretending to be extremely interested in a treatise on potion theory isn't likely to work. Robin's plan is more feasible." "So when do we go?" Ron asked. "Saturday night," Ron suggested. "This Saturday is the first Quidditch match of the season. Everyone will be talking about it all day. No one's likely to notice a break-in at the library." Robin raised an eyebrow. "That's a well-thought-out idea, but in the original story, something big happened the day of the match. Dobby turned up, cursed a bludger, and almost broke Harry's arm. Lockhart tried to fix it and somehow removed the bones, left Harry's arm soft as rubber. Dobby even apparated to the hospital wing that night, ranting and carrying on. The protagonist was far too busy that day to go into the restricted section." "We should go tonight instead," Hermione said. "Professor Binns just finished telling the chamber story. People will be talking about it now. The sooner we brew that potion, the sooner we can stop Malfoy from hurting anyone."